And we're up. It's working. And we are live. Hello and welcome to Fermenting Opinions. I'm your host, Dave Papiden.
I'm your co-host, James McVeigh.
And we are Fermenting Opinions, the podcast and Google Hangout show in search of a more palatable political ferment. This is November 22nd, 2019. And we are here to talk about sort of one big major story and one maybe less so story of the week. We're going to cover the what's been going on in the public impeachment inquiry, and we're also going to talk about the 45,000th Democratic debate.
27th, 18th one feels like this point.
Yeah, and really, it's not so much a breakdown of individual performances versus just sort of the overall feel of it. I don't want to spend too much time on debate stuff.
Yeah, in all fairness, I only saw clips and read articles. I didn't have time.
And I saw some. I haven't seen the whole thing. There's so much news going on, guys. It's really hard to stay on top of. We're here to see what we've all learned lately and see what we think about it.
But, we should start with the presidential debate, I think, because we can kind of gloss over that, because there's going to be a lot of meat.
Let's hit that quickly. My understanding and my takeaway from the things I've seen, Pete Buttigieg seems like he came out overall poll-wise as the most popular guy on the stage. His rhetoric was polished. He seemed to have good answers. The crowd responded well. Whether or not anybody here likes those answers or thinks that those were good answers is a different thing entirely. I know our friend R.K.C. Davis of Domestic Edition and a bunch of other stuff, International Rainbows, a bunch of different groups that he's involved in, is here with us tonight, and he is also a Indiana native.
Yeah, I was going to say we actually have two Indiana natives too, or well, at least two people living in Indiana, because RJ's there as well, if I remember correctly.
And I'm proud that RJ to know that RJ is a Hoosier.
A Hoosier? Oh, I thought you said loser. I was like, well, that's dick.
That's what my
we're just gonna
we're starting off like that. Okay.
that's what my AAA card says. So.
So I mean, I don't know. What did you see, David? Do you want to start us off with that?
I don't. Like I said, he came off very polished. He came off. So the top down thing is. Pete presents himself as sort of like the younger, more charismatic version, alternative rather, to Joe Biden.
Sure.
Who comes across as a doddering old man who doesn't seem to. He doesn't hold himself well. None of his campaign, in my opinion, has been good at all. He's still doing very well in the polls, regardless of that.
Sure. Yeah.
But Pete is the guy you wish Biden opened his mouth and you heard the things Pete were saying.
Sure.
Right? That's really what Pete is, and I think that's what he's trading on. But Pete also, demographically, he doesn't show up very well. He has like 0.0% of the black vote.
Yeah, they're never going to go to him at this point either.
He doesn't have a lot of executive experience. He was the mayor of South Bend. A lot of people have touted the line. Oh, he got like 9,000 votes.
I think he held some like county commissioner positions or something before that too. But
that's not a lot, man.
No, I'm well aware. Thin. I know. Yeah, to go from mayor of, South Bend's a decently sized city, but to go from mayor of a decently sized city and fly over America to president of the United States is pretty huge.
It's a big jump. He looks and conducts himself like he has the chops.
Yeah.
But that's the question is, like, does he really have the chops? And he has,
well,
he has a
maybe
great skill about that. But go ahead.
Maybe the question now is Pete Buttigieg leading the Democratic nomination at this point in time? Because by the polling, it looks like it.
In Iowa, he's leading.
I'd say he is.
He's ahead in Iowa and New Hampshire.
Yeah. And not only that, but the last poll I saw in Iowa, he was up by 9 points, which is a major lead.
Yeah.
That's huge.
I will say, do not make the mistake of underestimating this guy. I did the last time I was on the show, and RJ called me on it, and that was warranted. Looking into this guy and his history, and I'm going to try to relate a short story that kind of illustrates the caniness that this guy has, and I'll try to keep it short. And the first time I read it, I was kind of like off-put by it, but then I kind of respected how he did it. Apparently, in the Democratic primary to get the South Bend mayor candidacy, he was up against Ryan Dvorak, the representative of the 8th District for the State House here in Indiana. And Dvorak was the labor guy, and Buttigieg was, for lack of a better term, the big money guy. He was getting lots of donors. And he also, because there is no real Republican candidate in a South Bend mayor run, the Republicans backed him. Now, depending on who you trust, he supposedly drew in something up to 3,000 Republican voters to vote in the Democrat primary. Mm-hmm. But then, and whatever, you can have an opinion about that. The interesting part of the story is that 6 weeks of this campaign, Dvorak is exiled to Illinois for the walkout against right to work. So Dvorak's not even in the state running during all this.
Why is he in Illinois?
And the end point here is that Buttigieg knows his opportunities. He knows when to strike. He knows what's appealing about him and what to appeal to. He's intensely ambitious. This guy has wanted to be JFK since he was a kid, basically. So, yeah, I don't underestimate this guy. I think he's going to win the candidacy.
I mean, he's a military intelligence officer who speaks like half a dozen languages. So I would hope he knows
McKinsey consultant. He knows about strategy.
I was about to say, yeah, I would hope he understands when to strike and things like that. I mean, you would assume at this point that he ought to have picked that up.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the guy was a paid consultant. That doesn't really, for his private career before the military and before his entry into politics and military, and with McKinsey. And I don't know, my personal experience with consultants and the general joke about consultants is that they don't know their asses from holes in the ground usually. But if he was one of the good ones, I mean, I have no proof otherwise.
Yeah, I guess. McKinsey's pretty damn prestigious worldwide.
Prestigious, yes. They also have a lot of like really shady, awful shit they've done, and I could read you the Wikipedia article that has the list of controversies. But
definitely, and for people who are listening who aren't familiar with McKinsey, we could get into that if we wanted to, but I don't think that's that big of a deal to get into.
Here, real quick, the story that a person would have heard is that they had a lot to do with the famous $43 million gas station. Like that's like the shady thing that they're famous for is the task force. They were behind the task force that did that. I don't know. But you can't tie any of it to Buttigieg himself.
I would never say that someone doesn't know their ass from a hole in the ground if they work for McKinsey, simply because McKinsey is a very effective consulting firm.
There's a lot of educated people out there in the world, like the Paul Krugmans of the world, who don't know anyone's ass from any hole in the ground.
All right, fair enough. But I guess something I wanted to throw in here.
Sure.
Joe Biden. Jesus.
He's gonna punch.
He's gonna punch it.
Domestic violence and how to address this. We got to keep punching it.
We got to keep punching that domestic violence because
how many cuts are we at now?
I mean,
yeah,
I'm sorry, Haley. What'd you say?
I mean, a while ago I said, I mean, he's going to go down by the death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
And back then I said I think we're only at around 200 or something. So I think we're over 500.
Yeah, I think we're at good 556 at this point.
Yeah,
not
only that, but then he forgot Kamala Harris is black and exists.
Oh, that was
yeah. Because he said that he was,
classic.
He worked with the only black woman to be in the Senate. Kamala Harris is like standing right next to him, and it's just like, dude, what the fuck?
He couldn't hear her over the record player.
Yeah, I couldn't hear her over the record player.
He also
although to be fair, there are a lot of black voters who might assert that Kamala Harris isn't the blackest. From what I've read today. From what I've read today.
Yeah, well, and I was going to say that, even as a white person, I would vote to take away her black card for the kind of shit she did at a prosecutor.
Oh my God.
And her stances
it's excessive.
That shit on minorities and everything else. But
Kamala Harris is black. Let's not debate that.
Well, for the sake of it, she's also half Indian.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying that if there were, if anyone remembers the Chappelle Show and the racial drafts and all, I'm pretty sure she'd get traded. The black delegation would trade her in a heartbeat. I think, pretty sure.
Well, anyhow,
But anyway,
Kamala.
He
Kamala's performance was great though. She really wanted to be relatable and like a normal person.
She did
like
better this
you know,
one,
she
yeah.
very spoke colloquially and that type of thing. And she has a big like one of the thing, like people like to say she's a cop, whatever. Lots of people say that. I'll leave other people to say that. The criticism that I kept bumping into is was this word socialite, and you don't hear that word a lot, you know. And but apparently, like the way that she gained her footing in politics in California and worked her way up was, you know, it's very parallel to how a lot of politicians do it. But it's getting to really exclusive parties and talking to all the right, super rich, influential people. And once again, saying that out loud sounds like so bland, like that's what they all do. But like there was this article in Politico that and it was about how the title was how the richest families in San Francisco put Kamala Harris in power. And it was very interesting. Like she has actually a long history of code switching back and forth from being super rich and affluent Kamala to being Cammy on the block. And it's depending on where she is and who she needs to talk to. So,
I don't think it's a real fair criticism to say people read the room they're in.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, that's fair.
So, but
no,
anyway.
It's a particular criticism aimed at her that I saw again and again that I haven't seen specifically levied at other people in the field, and that I call bullshit on it. That's cool. I would love to hear why it's bullshit.
I think the remarkable thing about Kamala Harris is that she was apparently a very successful prosecutor, and you would not know it by the way that she is usually unable to think on her feet in these debates. It's shocking.
That's true, and it's kind of weird, RJ.
Well,
you raise a good point there, because when you see her in like Senate hearings last year before, stuff like that, when she would be in Senate hearings for the Russia probe and whatnot, she was excellent with interrogation. Like she was very good at cross-examining witnesses. But yeah, she's kind of not really shining.
She doesn't take the criticism.
Well, those are they're two different skills, though.
Yeah.
That's true, but
I mean, crossing someone versus making an argument, like those are two different skills.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Although, you know.
Oh yeah, I agree, and I just think that when she gets that deer in the headlights look and starts stammering and gives like a half answer, if she even gets halfway there, it's just shocking that she had a very successful legal career in an area where, at least, I mean, she wasn't doing like, you know, high-level appellate work, but she was doing things where thinking on your feet is presumably something that she was doing every day.
Yeah.
Her takedown of Gabbard was like I expected it to be more biting and like more effective, and like early on when and it's the reply where Gabbard replied, "But this is nothing but smears and blah blah blah," and like and that's what Gabbard would have said no matter what. But like I kind of expected Kamala to come with more facts, with more argument, and that type of thing, and I didn't feel like she sealed that criticism of Gabbard as much as I expected her to. I really did.
One person who did like cut Tulsi, rip her a new one was Pete. Did y'all see that? That was.
And, are you talking about the exchange at the end about Mexico?
Yes.
Yes, Haley, if you could elaborate on that.
I talked. I'm going to shut up after this because I know I've talked for a minute here. But I had an exchange with Craig Colebrook in Rainbows today, where I was pissed about that because my big thing is international, and that's why I walk in here and make a fool of myself on domestic politics. But Gabbard was essentially right of like this record of kind of how just egregiously stupid it is to say that we should send people to go fight the cartels in Mexico. Like that is a terrible plan, and Gabbard should have been able to dunk on him like a mother, and she did not. Because she's kind of empty-headed a little bit. She never goes in depth. She never has details. She just blathers out a lot of things that I really like to hear as far as taglines, but there's never any depth to it, and I know that.
That's actually
so. So I felt that she was in the right, like on the actual issue, but she completely failed to make the argument, so it doesn't matter. And at least that's my 2 cents on that. So I guess I'm trying to agree with Haley in the like shittiest way possible by saying that yes, he totally got her. He did. I just think that he was wrong. That's all.
Well, what he got her on is by calling her out on her extreme mischaracterization of what he said. So, I mean, she should have been able to dunk on him. Well,
I
the
don't
reason
think that
why
was
she
a
wasn't.
mischaracterization.
Okay, one at a time. One at a time.
I'm sorry.
It's cool.
That's me.
I would
Yeah,
like to hear
you said she
Haley
should have been able
elaborate.
to dunk on him. She wasn't able to because she completely mischaracterized and misrepresented what he said, and he called her out on that.
What did he
Well,
say?
what? Okay,
Yes,
then what did he say? Because,
Wait,
like,
Casey.
we talk very loosely about screwing with other countries all the time, and
Casey,
I'm sorry.
No, yes, please. Like, I would like to hear.
because it's ludicrous to suggest that, you know, we want to send troops down to Mexico to invade Mexico to fight cartels.
Then what did Buttigieg say?
Wait, what did?
Like, what did he actually say then?
He said that he was willing to, you know, he's open to talking about cooperating like we already have done in the past with intelligence and with, you know, like, you know, strategy and everything with the Mexican government to address the cartels.
Okay, well, I don't want to push it any further unless I actually get a text in front of me, and I won't shut down things to do that. But I vaguely remember the suggestion of personnel, but whatever, Haley. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, what I was going to say, and I was going to make a joke, and then we can move on from this. But I was going to say that. But I want to make my joke. It sounds like Buttigieg saw Sicario, and that movie was dope. Just in case nobody's seen the first Sicario, it was great. Second one was cool, but it was not great.
He questioned her judgment on meeting with I'm going to mispronounce his name.
Assad.
Yeah, and then she started listing a bunch of people who have met with dictators, and he was like, and Donald Trump with North Korea.
He did a really good job of creating a parallel between Tulsi meeting with him,
with al-Assad,
and Trump meeting with, you know,
Kim Jong-un
and Putin and Erdogan and the guy from, was it Dominican Republic? I can't remember exactly.
Dominican Republic.
No.
Probably the Philippines.
That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Dorode.
That guy. Anyway. Yeah.
He's the
worst. Duterte.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for saving me on that one.
That guy is the worst.
I got both the name and
that guy is crazy pants banana bonkers. Oh my gosh.
He is fucking absolutely insane.
The fact that he creating sort of the parallel between Tulsi and, because it's known in more liberal circles that it's a lot of times it's said Tulsi isn't even really a Democrat, that, you know, she's basically Republican light, or she's a plant from the Republican, but like all these things that are kind of unfair to greater or lesser degree.
She's so moderate that people worry that she's starting to lean right.
But him doing that
issue by issue, James. It depends on which issue.
In terms of scoring points in a debate, he made himself look good in that moment, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no.
I think we're all in I forget who said Tulsi bottomed out. Like, that's not an inaccurate description.
Yeah, I did. I said that, and that's what I'd heard. Again, I didn't see too much of this, and you guys are talking about things that I didn't really see much of with Tulsi, but I heard that she kind of flailed across the board.
She specifically tried to keep an even head and to look sane and reasonable, you know, but it didn't save her.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Anyone else have any thoughts about this Democratic debate before we switch over to talking about?
Yeah, my main thought is that David is being proven correct more so by every debate that goes by. This is not useful for the Democrats at this point. This debate was the lowest rated. I think that part of that might be because the Democrats cross-programmed their own material, in that they spent over 7 hours during the day interviewing people for the impeachment inquiry, and then they had their Democratic debate that night. They get to set those hearings. They could have set them on a different day. They didn't.
Yeah.
But having 10 people out there, some of whom just are not realistic options.
Thank you.
you know, the first couple have Marianne Williamson out there, and it's funny and it's cute, and you know, maybe she says one interesting thing about reparations, and you know, we can remember that for the rest of our lives. But by the time you get into the 5th debate, and my God, by the time we get to the 12th, this needs to be pared down. They are making it way too easy to qualify for these things, and we are hearing from people like Tulsi who don't deserve to be on the stage. They're just taking up space, taking up time, and undermining what is going to be more helpful for the Democrats, which is getting to a few main message points that people can debate over and talk about and say, well, what's most realistic here? Is Medicare for all the way that we should be going? Is Warren's sort of new compromise something that people are going to vote for? Is Pete Buttigieg correct in saying that Medicare for those who want it is the way to go? Right now, it's just the voices are too disparate, and everybody's trying to get a chance to talk, and nothing is happening. They need to very quickly tighten up what polling you need, where you need to be showing in Iowa and New Hampshire, because there are too many people on that stage, and with more people entering, it's only going to get worse.
Absolutely.
And just to kind of piggyback on the first thing that you said, RJ, I completely agree with about limiting it and everything. But I was also just extremely disappointed that they weren't talking about the breaking news that had been happening this week. You know, I understand that it's a Democratic debate and they have to talk about their platforms and talk about the issues, but they did not mention really anything about any of the impeachment hearings that had been going on for the 4 days, because we're going to count the business day of Thursday or whenever it was. And so I don't know, I was just kind of disappointed in that. Like, I mean, talk about it. Like, talk about how you would handle
it. It was
that
the opening
situation.
question, wasn't it? Like, that was it.
There was a few opening questions in terms.
But that was it.
Like, should we impeach Trump? Yes. You know, like, what? But then you talk about, like, how would you handle relations with Ukraine? Because all of us are getting a better understanding about, like, the intricacies of foreign relations. And I just thought that could have been touched on.
That's actually a really good point, too. I was going to say
that would have been a fabulous question.
Those of us who are really deep diving into this thing have learned a lot about foreign relations with Russia and Ukraine through this goddamn thing. I'm telling you.
Have we ever? Yeah.
I had no idea how intricate the corruption is in Ukraine.
But
oh my gosh, in Ukraine you've got levels of corruption, you've got like fascists and every type of wingnut militia, and I'll stop. But
this is probably a good time to segue, Dave.
Yeah, we have those in America too, by the way.
This is a good point to segue off of. But I will say one thing sort of in closing about the debates. RJ, thank you for saying that I've proved myself right. I agree with you in that I agree with me. The lead talker of the whole debate was Warren. She got like 13 minutes out of like a 2+ hour debate. Like there's no focus. It's all noise. There's people like Tom Steyer who like basically is the Monopoly man with giant bags of money and buys himself away onto the stage. Like great, nobody hates you, but like you don't fucking belong up here. You're not going to be the nominee. Stop it. Like.
His name is Uncle Moneybags, I'd like to point out.
Yeah.
Talking about Joe?
I have one counterpoint to this. Let's make a small thing, which I'm going to go ahead and say that I actually basically agree with.
Okay.
Especially for the sake of the Democratic Party. That's undebatable. For the sake of the Democratic Party, you've got to pare this down. For America, this institution of having these debates, including the primary debates, where it's this big showcase and we have all the people who pull a certain amount, get on stage and are able to pitch their thing. Like that was the basic idea behind Bernie being on stage during the Clinton thing, and that's the reason why we have socialism in popular discussion, as far as I understand it, which.
At least in part, but yes.
There are a lot of cool things that can happen with people who don't belong to be on the stage, pitching their angle for the few weeks that they can be on TV until they get booted out. I think that's very cool, and I believe essentially useful to the process, even though it's not like written into the Constitution or anything. It's kind of a new institution, but it gets a lot of new ideas out there, and I think that's very cool, but that's all I'll say about it. For the sake of the party, you got to pare it down. I agree there.
Absolutely. I think most of us are more or less of a mind on that. anyway, but yeah, we should move on at this point. I don't think there's too much else to say. That's not already been said about the latest round of debates. Let's talk about the impeachment inquiry. Let's talk about Ukraine. Let's talk about what's been going on in these testimonies. Most of which I've only got to see sort of secondhand in bits and pieces, and think pieces written and political articles and all that good stuff. I've not gotten to, because I work, and they're all taking place during the morning, during the weekdays, so I haven't seen as much of that personally as I would like to see, but I know there's others that have been able to pay a little bit more attention. My take, and before we started this, I said, because there's so much debate about the substance of each one of these people testifying. To me, we already had enough. We, as in people who think Trump acted corruptly and deserves to be impeached, we had enough when the sort of the synopsis of the transcript of the July 25th call was released, and Trump was saying, "Do me a favor. I want you to do this with the Bidens. I want you to look into CrowdStrike, da 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 da." Like, that by itself is a violation of campaign finance law. The citation.
It's 52 USC 3121.
That's
Got
the
that
one
memorized.
Basically involving a foreign power in either by asking for or receiving a thing of value towards one's political campaign. That is exactly what that is. That is the very kernel of this whole thing. When that was released, we were off to the fucking races with Nancy Pelosi and all the rest of them. That's when this started, and all of the rest of this is just a series of interviews with fact witnesses about what they saw and what they heard along the way. To my mind, I guess Sondland was the sort of the big kahuna of the week, where he gave his opening statement saying, to the question, was there quid pro quo? The answer is yes. This is somebody who was a Trump donor, I believe, and this is not an unusual thing to either party, that when you give a lot of money to the campaign of a presidential candidate, like millions of dollars kind of thing, and he wins, you're going to get an ambassadorship somewhere if that's what you want.
That was Warren's very first opening words, actually, was, how did Sondland get that job?
Right.
By paying for it. And I'm not going to do that anymore.
Okay.
So just to fold our last topic into this one.
Good job.
Let's cover that, though, really quickly.
Go ahead.
Because this is a normal thing.
Yeah.
This is about a third of ambassadors pay for their jobs, essentially. They get them through campaign donations. It's exactly what they do.
Yeah, you get to play fat cat on the
very, very common.
On the red, white, and blue company dime. Go ahead.
And to add to that, it usually works out pretty well. Sure. Because the machinations of the American State Department are so rigorous and well run that an ambassador is mostly a show position if it needs to be. Now you can have a very effective ambassador who is an expert in the field, but Dan Rooney, who owned the Steelers before he died, he was named as an ambassador to Ireland, right? Now, we have pretty good relations with Ireland. He was a good ambassador to Ireland. Why? Because he didn't really need to do anything. He gave a bunch of money to the Democratic Party, and even though he was mostly a Republican through his life, Obama appointed him as the ambassador to Ireland for a few years. It's the sort of thing that is extremely common.
Yeah.
Yes, at least in countries where matters of national security and whatnot involved. Or not involved. We usually
I would say
to places like Russia, Ukraine, things like that.
Well, it's a lot easier to stick some guy who's just going to sit there and smile and shake hands at meetings to be the ambassador to Ireland. The problem with our well-run State Department is when it turns into a money hose that just sprays money into Sudan or wherever, and it just evaporates. Sure. And like you should really have people who are not just paying for the job there, but I think they make sure to put people who haven't paid for the job in those places. If you pay for a job in the State Department, you're paying for Ireland. You're not paying for the Sudan. So yeah.
Right. So Sondland, as a guy, okay, and the reason it's worth pointing out, it's not to besmirch him necessarily. Like, this is how this is how it's done in Washington, right? These guys end up with jobs as ambassadors because they were big fat cat donors, right? That's what they wanted. They want to play ambassador, and that's what they get. They've purchased that when their candidate wins. Okay, fine, and it's not unique to Trump. It's not unique to the Republican Party. Like, that's just how it's done. Probably shouldn't be, but that is how it's done. And so the thing that is interesting about Sondland is he's a guy who's not necessarily, this isn't a like Roger Stone level loyalist of Trumpism or Trump, right? He's a guy who understands that he's testifying before Congress. He's under penalty of perjury. If he's caught out at it, contradicting maybe too hard testimonies that have been corroborated, by 6 or 7 other fact witnesses that have come before at this point, he's not trying to put himself out there.
I think it's similar to say he's not going to jail for Trump, and we can immediately name
that is the
5
simple way to
people
think.
who are.
Say it. Yes.
Manafort, Flynn, Papadopoulos, Cohen, and now Stone is up. I think there's someone else in there that I missed, and that's just off the top of my head.
Yeah,
But
and that's
either currently have or will serve prison time.
Right,
Yeah,
and he doesn't want to join that. He doesn't want to join that confederacy of dunces.
I was going
right?
to say is that I think that Sondland saw what the fuck just happened to Stone specifically,
Right.
the week before he testified, and was like,
Yep.
"Oh shit, I'm not about to be convicted for lying."
He had
to Congress.
during closed door testimony, he had given a certain testimony, and then I guess
retracted it and
not retracted it. He provided an
Supplement.
addendum. His memory was refreshed upon, I guess, being made aware that perjury is something that you can go to jail for.
Right. When other people who were in the same room that he was in told a different story, he was like, "Oh shit, I remember that differently now."
Yeah.
That's how it works. And then everyone wonders why the Democrats really push to have depositions first.
Right.
Secret
Closed door,
depositions. Well, they're depositions,
right.
but yeah, closed door depositions is because they don't want people tainting their testimony and shaping it around everyone else's.
So he wasn't necessarily a huge friend to everyone here. He didn't just say all the things the Democrats wanted to say, because he talked about the call. He didn't specifically name like Trump's name or something like that. Where another, I think it was Vinland, had mentioned overhearing him say Trump or something like that. And he said that
Schiff still definitely had to wring it out of him.
Yeah.
Like, it came out, but he had to get it wrung out of him.
It wasn't exactly what he was looking for, and you could tell
Yeah.
Schiff sort of react to that in the moment. That was one.
And
thing.
Sondland's the only one I watched. So
Yeah.
Okay, wait. I'm trying to understand. You're talking about the July 26th phone call.
No,
I was talking about the overall phone.
I'm talking about Sondland's testimony. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
July 26th. That would have been July 26th.
okay,
That was the
was it?
day after the Zelensky phone call that Trump made that started all of
Gotcha.
this. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
still, the most important thing is that
the one David Holmes overheard and testified to.
yes,
Okay, so no, he straight up admitted to that. That had to be wrung out of him. The thing that had to be wrung out of him was whether or not there was a benefit to Trump.
That's what I was trying to say. I'm sorry.
Yeah. What about the call? Because, I mean, he straight up admitted.
No,
it.
yeah, that was
And
out.
then when they were reading the transcript, it was like, yeah, you said something like, or, Holmes testified that Zelensky loves your ass to Trump. And he was like, yeah, it sounds like something I'd say. And then he was talking about, he's like, yeah, we use a lot of 4-letter words to communicate when I talk to Trump.
yeah. Anyway, so
He was still being Trump's buddy the whole time. It was so weird.
of course he was. He's that's the boss now. He gave the guy a bunch of money and he's the boss now, and they're buddies. They I guess there was something reported over 20 phone calls between the two of them, lasting who knows how long. Like they riff together. There were a couple of rich dudes who talk about being rich dudes, I guess, or whatever the fuck they do. Like I don't know what these
man
guys
for
talk
sport.
about. Other than despoiling America. I don't know. But
Sure. So just to kind of put things in context, I guess. That's
right.
what I'd like to do.
The things that are most significant, to get back to that, about Sondland, talking about in his testimony, again, he said, yes, there was quid pro quo, which is a direct contradiction to much of like the right-wing media narrative, to the Trump narrative, that there was no quid pro quo. do we want to break that down? We'll break that down in a second.
Sure, yeah, I was going to say, we can do that.
But that, and also that everybody, like, he implicated effectively everybody in the upper echelons of the administration, including Mike Pence, the Boy Scout, who's not supposed to know anything about anything.
I don't believe the Mike Pence part personally, but that's just me.
But that, like, everybody knew this aid was being withheld, the military aid and some total somewhere now.
Wait, no. We got to not confuse that. I'm sorry. I'm just going to correct the record
Go ahead.
if you don't mind. No, he's saying that the presidential visit to the White House, Zelensky coming to the White House,
Yes, that was
the
conditioned
quid
as
pro
well.
quo.
Yes.
No, but he said he was not sure about the aid. He refused to confirm that. He said,
Real quick, I have a question.
hang on,
I'm sorry.
He said, I suspect that the aid was part of this as well, and I came to suspect it. However, I can't tell you one way or the other, but the thing he was talking about where everybody knew and it was no secret.
Basically that he didn't use the word inferred, but he inferred that the aid was withheld
Yes.
as a conditional for the announcement of the investigation
Yes.
into the Biden's / corruption.
But the
generally
thing
speaking.
that he was hammering on about everybody knew it was no secret was there was already a quid pro quo for the White House visit by Zelensky. And that's still per se bribery. Like,
Yeah.
Was
we're
the
still
aid
there. It's
actually
still bribery.
withheld?
It's still an official act that you're trading.
It was because so the July
Yes.
the July 25th call was the big call between Trump and Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. He's saying, "Do me a favor, this and that. I want to look into CrowdStrike. I want to look into the Bidens. That seems like it was very bad. It was a good investigator, and the Biden got rid of him. Like, we need to look into that." And President Zelensky's, "Oh yeah, sure, we'll do that." Days later, so this was an aid package, military aid package that was approved at some point prior.
It would have been in February when you passed the budget every year.
So this aid package was approved way before, was scheduled to arrive within days of this call, right?
Okay.
So, but at the time, President Zelensky and Bill Taylor, who and several other people who were not aware of this particular call, they essentially had other concerns on the Nexus, but then found out after the fact this aid package did not arrive days after this call. So there's here, I want you to do a thing. You were promised for basically $400 million. 4 days later, the $400 million doesn't arrive. What that would say to me in no uncertain terms is you better do the thing I asked you if you want.
I had heard Republican claims that the aid was never actually withheld, but that was probably erroneous. I just wanted to clarify.
Right. No, to clarify, I can answer this real fast. What happened was after Sondland's testimony, which pretty much machine gunned everyone in the administration, the Republican talking point switched from no quid pro quo to it can't be bribery because the aid was eventually released in September.
Eventually, okay.
So they're saying the aid wasn't withheld. It was released, and it was released without an investigation and without a White House meeting. So how can it possibly be bribery? Which is funny because if I ask you for money to give you a permit to build a road and you say, no, that's a bribe, I'm not going to do that, that's unethical, I still committed bribery. It doesn't matter whether you gave me the money or not.
You're absolutely right. One other thing I wanted to caveat real fast is I'm pretty sure the aid was supposed to go to them in April or May, and that there was a hold on it for months because
it wasn't for months. It was with like a week or two before the aid was supposed to arrive. A hold was placed on it. To this day, there is no official justification for the hold.
because I mean everyone was wondering about it. Mitch McConnell said to the press, like, I asked about it and never got an explanation.
Right. There is no explanation. I think that's the most telling part.
The total time, just so we get a general calendar of this, is that the aid was withheld for 55 days.
55
That's what's
days.
Been reported. So
wow, okay.
And it was really,
and that would go through to September 11th. So go back into July. There you go.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, and again, the timeline of events was there was a whistleblower report. I think when knowledge of that came out, that was within days of Zelensky actually supposedly his intention to go on CNN and announce that there was going to be an investigation into the Biden / corruption. But then the whistleblower report came out. We launched the we launched the impeachment inquiry, right? This thing got real official with Nancy Pelosi. Within 2 days, both Zelensky decided not to appear on CNN, and the aid package was released. And that's why they're saying, oh, well, it wasn't withheld, so you can't say it's bribery, because after we started basically the impeachment process in an unofficial sense, then the aid package was released. It was like, I'm holding someone's money that I owe them, and I'm not going to pay them. And then once I get investigated for holding their money and not paying them, I give it to them. It's like, see, no, he's got his money. He's fine. He's fine. He's got his money right
Honestly,
here.
thank
Say
you for
you're
explaining
fine.
that, because that's I don't feel like that's clear in the news, and maybe I'm just not reading the right article, but thank you.
Yeah, no, and well, it's being obscured, and as RJ pointed out, like that's kind of the tactic there.
Right, and
Well, I think that's also poor writing.
At least, well, yeah.
I mean, that's what they're just repeating. Ukraine got the aid.
Exactly. And
Right.
and no one's pointing out the fact that bribery doesn't have to actually involve an exchange of things for it to be bribery.
I love
It's
that
the fact
point.
that you attempted to do it.
I've
You know,
heard.
like, it's the offer that's the bribe. The bribe is the offer.
So I listened to the opening arguments podcast, which is like kind of like what we do. There's like a guy like me who's not a lawyer, and he talks to a lawyer and interviews them about questions. And they made the analogy to Sideshow Bob on The Simpsons when he was on trial, and I guess he was trying to make some kind of nefarious device. And you know what I'm talking about? And as his defense, he said, well, you can't be guilty of attempted chemistry, right? When he was trying to make the bomb or whatever it was.
Did you see the actual one of the writers who wrote that thing like got pissed and was talking about that?
Yeah.
And was like, how dare they make
Use
the
my
Sideshow
defense.
Bob defense?
Right, yeah, it's the Sideshow Bob defense. It's like, well, if a cop pulls you over and you offer him money and he doesn't take it, you still tried to bribe a cop, didn't you?
Yeah, it's still bribery.
You know?
Yeah, you still committed bribery. Like, I mean, even if you want to look at it in the sense of bribery only occurs once the exchange happens, you still committed attempted bribery. There are attempts and conspiracies.
Oh,
There are
right. Well,
laws for
and
this that
Rod
covers that.
one of the charges Rod Blagojevich went down on was conspiracy to commit
thank
bribery.
You. Thank
Exactly.
you. Yes,
Yep.
absolutely.
That's what I'm saying.
Kind
Also,
of-
I've heard that in reference.
I've had a little bit of a deja vu thing from back when we were talking about Mueller and everything and obstruction of justice.
Mm-hmm.
And the analogy that I had said was, like if you are on trial, even if you didn't commit the crime, and a witness is coming to testify, and you go to their house and you take their keys and you throw their keys away so that way they can't drive their car to the courthouse to testify. And even if the witness still shows up, you still tried to obstruct justice because you tried to prevent that witness from going there.
Absolutely.
And it sort of, since we're talking about Sondland, I also had like the simultaneous thought that one of the things that he mentioned, and y'all were talking earlier about his changing of his statement, maybe because I'm in the corporate defense world, I didn't view it through as harsh of a lens. But one of the things that he brought up consistently was that the White House and the State Department had denied him access to emails and memorandums and other documents that he was given. And I think that if you think about it, if you think of now I'm going into my head of like the Democratic strategy here, like they are building up an obstruction charge, and they're probably going to piggyback that with an obstruction charge in Mueller. Should it eventually, like in thinking about the specific articles of impeachment that they're going to go forward, because they're going to have to draft articles that are going to be good for a Senate trial. And I think that they actually have a pretty strong, I mean, they've been building it over a little while now. It's been a minute. It's been over a year, and they have example after example after example of obstruction. So
I think I agree with you in the sense that yes, there absolutely was obstruction. Yes, there is a good case for obstruction.
We talked about this. There were four counts that had clear and
Right,
substantial
right.
evidence.
But I yes, but what I'm saying is they're
Probably
also
counts.
building it in this Ukraine in the Ukraine inquiries.
Sure, and in that as well, in ordering White House officials to ignore subpoenas, like that's all obstruction stuff. The thing I think that has to be understood. At least there is a faction, I guess, within Democrats, and I'm part of this faction of people who don't think there's any realistic path to removal from office in the Senate, right? So why are we impeaching? What are we doing? This is about messaging, to my mind.
I saw several people, and I'm not a Twitter person. I've been on Twitter recently, but I saw several House people, Democrats and Amash, talking about how the House, and I'm sorry if I'm using the wrong terminology, but the House portion of the impeachment is just an indictment, based on like we think that there's enough reason that this might be going on. That's all the House part of it is.
That is essentially what articles of impeachment are when they pass. It's basically
Well, it's an investigation culminating in an indictment.
Yes.
Right.
But
so I saw several House people saying, well, it doesn't matter what the Senate does. We have enough to do the House part right now. That's I saw a few people say that, including Amash today.
Sure, and I mean,
and they do.
I agree, but you don't want to pass the ball
too quickly, right?
Yeah. You don't want to throw into like triple coverage. Like to use a football analogy, is you want a clean pass. Like if you're going to pass it, make it a good fucking play.
Right.
I don't know. I think they're in a rock and a hard place right now. Yeah, I mean, you got to think about it. Warren and Sanders are both senators.
They are.
They would be in the trial. Next year is 2020.
Yep.
And it's also like and Booker and Harris. They're also.
Yep.
Does that mean
it comes to the point where, like, do we have enough that we need anything to do it? Are they going to be the ones that, are going to follow, are Republican people, did they take the same oath? Do they feel the same way? At the end of the day, like, you got to do what you got to do. And you don't want to be tying up, your people in a campaign against that dude during an impeachment trial, because the Senate's the jury. They can't leave.
Yeah.
Well, right. Yeah. And I think to just piggyback off of that idea, what I've said for a long time now is I thought that the House should have opened an impeachment inquiry far before they did.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they should ever close it. I think that should be part of the strategy. There's no reason to bring articles of impeachment. Right now, just tonight, breaking news, there is an aide to Giuliani is willing to tell Congress that Devin Nunes met with an ex-Ukrainian official to get dirt on Biden.
Isn't that Lev Parnas?
Oh my God! Is it the Parnas thing?
I haven't read the article yet. It happened while we were on this hangout.
Oh God!
I think it was Parnas actually. Hang on.
Yeah,
I've got man, you guys. I'm trying to write down things. Keep going, RJ.
I know there's a lot going on. But go ahead.
So these are not closed-end investigations. Like there was a robbery. Let's find out who robbed the place. There was a robbery. Oh my God, we've uncovered a multinational ring of robberies. We know, for example, based on just the one call, the July 25th call with Zelensky, that the White House has been locking down Trump's phone calls. We know that he's been having phone conversations with other countries. Hell, that's a good place to start investigating. Say, has he asked anyone else about Biden, about doing investigations into political opponents?
Yes.
I see no reason to shut down this investigation. And I agree that strategically you don't want to go into like April and start having a Senate trial then. But there's no reason to ever have a Senate trial.
Okay. I have a number of things I got to mention here. So right now, Pelosi and crew have basically said the House's goal is to impeach by Christmas, before the Christmas break. If they do so, the Senate's goal, and the GOP leaders in the Senate have said right now, like today, they were talking about we should set a time limit for 2 weeks most for trial. So it'll be a short trial because there's really not a whole lot to adjudicate here. That brings me back to what Haley was talking about, the Mueller counts of obstruction. That's not going to be part of this. They're going to focus on this one incident because it is so egregious. There's no reason to complicate it, and bring back up Mueller and then give them the defense of, well, there was no collusion, so there can't be. I mean, like
it's so that the American public don't lose the thread.
Exactly.
That's
so,
my
and
take.
I think they're just going to focus on this. But as RJ said, or wait, was it RJ or Haley that was talking about the issue of tying up the senators as jury members?
Yeah, they're gonna have to take a break from the campaign.
Sucks,
Yeah.
and not only that, but I guarantee you, when the Republicans write the rules, because they write the rules for the Senate trial, just like the House wrote the rules for. So when the Republicans write the rules for the Senate trial, they're going to go 6 days a week, and you can't leave D.C. and you're going to be. I mean, you could. You're just not part of the vote, and you're going to get
Right.
rocked
Practically,
for not
you've
doing
gotta
that.
be
Yeah,
there,
you
yes.
have to be there. But go ahead. Wait,
Just like speaking about the realities of the consequences of real impeachment, as opposed to just putting it in the news to tear down Trump for the elections purposes, as RJ suggested, and makes 1,000 times more sense than actually doing it. Who the hell wants to run against Mike Pence? Like, I know that guy is exceedingly defeatable, but he's not nearly as defeatable as Trump.
Anyway,
That's literally all I had to
I don't
say.
think he inspires as much confidence among the deplorables, so to speak.
Right.
But anyway,
So I mean, like, my one thought is like I think that what the Democratic leadership have said is that they're going to make a decision of whether or not to vote to impeach by Christmas, and I mean, Iowa is February 6th. I think that caucus is February 6th, but. So I don't think that they're going to do it. I think that they're going to probably employ RJ's strategy for a little longer, but there's a risk there. And that risk is we have Donald Trump as president. And, he is worried about, the Kardashians, what the Kardashians are thinking about international policy. Like that was brought up. Like you tell the Kardashians, you did what you did with Sweden.
hang on. What I was going to say really quickly, and because I got kind of cut off on that, was just the Senate Dems and the fact they're going to be tied up with a trial. If the GOP is serious about sticking to a short trial, and I think this will be a short trial in general, if you start the trial when they come back from recess over the holidays, the Senate Dems that are stuck there can campaign basically on television every friggin' night and talk about it because it's public trial. I mean,
Sure.
You can use that as your campaigning.
Yeah, but they can't campaign in Iowa for a caucus.
That's true, but you can be all over the television on the thing that
everyone's
going to be
but that's not really how.
It's
it's a
that's
caucus.
A limited impact.
But so wait, I lost my I lost my thought. Well, oh yeah, the risk. I mean, the risk is he's still the president. He's still in office. He's done this one egregious act. He really isn't showing any kind of sense of backing down. No quid pro quo, no collusion. I'm going to tweet freaking, 45 times in, 3 hours, which like is really hard to do. About freaking Saudi Arabia or something. They did something like that the other day. So I mean, the risk is like, depending on like how strongly you feel about this oath that you take to do things in the best interest of the American people, like, can you allow this person to stay? Not like, can you, are you going to not do the one thing that you could do to possibly get them out? Like, so.
Well, sure.
I think that they'll go longer, but that's the risk that they're taking.
Well, I think that the counterbalance to that is that if they don't try to get this done by the Christmas break, which is already going to be shortened by Thanksgiving, that they can adjudicate some of the problems with not suborning, but ignoring subpoenas from Congress.
But they've dropped all of those suits. They've withdrawn their subpoenas. They're not
all of them?
Yes.
Wow.
There's still arguments going on with, I think, Mueller subpoenas from back in the day. But anything that's involved in this, the Democrats have withdrawn their subpoenas specifically because they don't want to tie it up in courts because they're trying to fast track this.
I don't,
Okay, well, I mean, they can reissue them. I mean,
Well, sure, you can.
yeah.
but can you-
it seems.
what do we think the strategy is here? Because you're saying drag it out, don't ever have a trial. I understand. I don't have a realistic expectation of removal in the Senate. So again,
anybody
to your point, why go to trial then, right? This is about sending a message to the American people that Trump is super corrupt as fuck, and the Republicans in the Senate
finding
don't
more
have the moral
wrongdoers.
spine to convict him, and they're all a bunch of rats. They're all untrustworthy. No confidence in any Republican. Vote blue all the way down the line.
Yeah, I was going
That's
to say,
the message, right?
I think the message is we tried to get rid of him and we failed.
Well,
And now it's
that's
up to you and
the
ballot.
Democrats
But we
could
tried and
meet both
failed, like we're
RJ
good
and
at
Haley's
failing,
point.
bullshit.
But I think that's really going to be their message. If they're really fast tracking it, and they know they're not going to win in the Senate, then it's we tried, we couldn't do it. They stonewalled us. Get them the fuck out of office.
Oh, and that
That's-
works
I mean,
too.
but that's
They can go
also
ahead and
not
get it through the House,
that's not
though, guys.
strategy. That's not the strategy either. So, I mean, one of the biggest things that you can do as a defense attorney is whenever the plaintiff attorney is like, I want to go to trial, like, let's go to trial, is you can say, let's do it. Because you're ready to go to trial. That's one of the things you can say, which is what the Republicans are probably like, okay, like trying to put on.
That
What's
is,
the scary reaction to that is whenever the other side starts truly prepping for it. And what the Democrats are missing right now, if they're considered the prosecutor / plaintiff attorney in this hypo, is that white hat. Either, one, I'm the state and I'm here, to protect the state and, put away someone who did a horrendous crime. Or look at how injured my client is and this is a horrible corporation. That white hat that everyone likes. And so what they're doing right now is by December, they're going to see, do they have that white hat on? So.
Interesting.
True.
Yep. Two things there. One, the thing I just mentioned about Nunez is being brought up as an ethics complaint tonight. So that'll be an interesting developing story. But two, James, you and I were talking about this last week. There are some backdoor ways to attempt to make the Senate trial actually something more than a show trial.
I wanted to bring that up too.
So the Senate is going to set the rules for trial, and it has to do so by a majority. Obviously, the Republicans have the majority, so they can set whatever rules they want.
They have
but
a very slim majority.
Yeah, so you only need a few defectors, 3 to be exact, in order to make some hardline rules. And the most interesting one that I've seen floated, this is what James and I were talking about, is that you could make the vote on removal a secret ballot.
Yes, exactly. And not only that, how many Republican senators have already agreed basically that they're going to resign or be done with their position once their term ends?
I think it's 4, right?
There's 4 or 5. I know one of ours is Lamar Alexander, the Tennessee senator. Lamar absolutely decided.
Wasn't there another Tennessee senator who's resigning?
He already did it. He went out.
Corker?
Yeah, Corker. He already went out because Marsha Blackburn took his spot.
Yeah, we got Marsha now. She's a
fucking
cretin. But anyway, go ahead.
But yeah, Lamar is one of them. And I actually know Lamar and helped work with him on a re-election campaign back in 2014. Yeah, it was 2014 because he's up for re-election in 2020 theoretically, but he's calling quits. He fucking hates Donald Trump. Like, really hates him. Absolutely opposed to pretty much everything he does. Just can't stand
Romney?
Mitt Romney is obviously there. Sure. He's very vocal about it. Ben Sass is also very vocal about it.
Is Justin Amash?
No, Amash.
No, he's in the House.
Senator. He's a
I'm my bad.
but
bad.
you also have what's her name? Collins.
Even as I said it, I was like, no, that's not right.
Yeah, Collins, who was always the swing vote, sitting there. Who's the chick out of Alaska, like Murkowski or something?
Murkowski.
Yep. So, I mean, I just listed 5, but I know for a fact the 3 amigos.
That's just off the top of your head. And we're not political analysts.
Exactly. But I'm telling you, I know for a fact Romney, Sass, and Alexander are good to go. If that's a real option, first of all, Pelosi's no slouch. She's been in office for a while. She knows what she's doing. She's Speaker of the House for a reason. She's already probably talked to these people about this. There's probably a reason they're fast tracking it.
That's
the first time I've ever heard you say anything nice about Pelosi, which just goes to show that, man, she is killing it right now.
Nah, she really is. I mean, I disagree
Can I?
with her.
I want to
across the
say
board. I
something
hate her, but
about that. This
but
when
she's
this
not a bad politician.
when
She knows
this
what she's
whole
doing.
thing started, I had a sense of, okay, I saw that. I read the sort of the synopsis of the transcript, whatever kind of thing. There's a little bit of a what the fuck here, but like, amidst the background of corrupt shit that Trump does, it was like this wasn't necessarily standing out particularly much more strongly to me than all the other stuff. But yet Pelosi grabbed hold of this thing, and we are off to the damn races. We are out of the trenches. We are.
I mean,
charging
I
across
think
no
that,
man's
you
land.
know,
Either she knows what is going on here, and she has a very clear strategy, and she's not a stupid person. She has a very clear strategy. She knows what she's doing, and she knows the end game, or we're all lost.
I think
I don't
that
think she
one
has
thing
an
that-
end game. I think
well-
she was always playing it by ear, and that's a sign of intelligence, though. I think that she's smart enough to play it by ear.
I think one of the big things that that is something that's like kind of glaring, that just might not be glaring to, you know, us as everyday Americans, is it's with the Ukrainian president. And, you know, I think that that is just a very big red flag of Donald Trump. The day after Mueller's hearing, where he testifies,
Yes,
says
literally.
this to the Ukraine. So it's the timing. So one, that timing, and two, and it's Ukraine. We know that Russia's being aggressive against Ukraine. We know that they're in an active war. We know about aid. And so, like, okay, you see him telling a foreign leader, do me a favor, and I get, you know, like, and like, I just didn't realize, you know, that maybe it had so much teeth, but it's the fact of the timing and Ukraine, it being Ukraine.
It is, and you're right about that. And David, that's when we cut our first podcast about this, right when it happened. We did so at my old house.
We were,
remember?
yeah, absolutely.
And-
we were
and-
like,
Yeah, and I was telling you that I was like, okay, I went and did my research, and this violates campaign finance law. That's the first thing I thought. It was like, you know, just based on the whistleblower's report, because we did it the day it came
we're
out.
still. I mean, we're still right there.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
I was like, yeah, no, this violates campaign finance law. And that was about it for me. Like, you know, when I was looking
Did y'all
at it,
mention, so I wasn't on that, but like one of the biggest things that stuck out to me immediately whenever this news story started breaking about this call was the timing, that it was the day after the Mueller investigation.
Exactly.
I thought at the Mueller hearing, so that was what hit me first. And then, like, you know, like after you're able to think a little longer, then I realized Ukraine. But did that come up at all?
Yeah, and Haley, do you know how actually how I found out it was a violation of 52 USC 3121?
You fucking lying.
No, I
love
literally pulled that I got the statute from the Mueller report because it's the same thing that Donald Trump Jr. was investigated for in Trump Tower with the Russians. The whole point of collusion.
He brought that.
But did you make the connection that like that call happened the day after his hearing?
Exactly,
Yes.
and that's what. That's
Actually, yes.
I
that's why
mean,
it
you could
brought
pull
up
it.
to me
You
when
read
I
a
was
report, you
researching
pulled
this.
it, but like, did you make the connection of the timing of the call versus the day of Mueller's hearing?
Yes, and I think I talked about it in that.
Someone's not listening to the podcast.
Yeah, I was going to say I think I talked about that too, and that
I haven't. I didn't
specifically
listen to
mentioned it,
that
and I was
one.
like,
I
it's
know
so
you.
weird.
It's okay.
I was like, it was so weird that happened. That it was the day after Mueller's shit, and here is Donald Trump the day after Mueller testified, doing the same
shit.
thing that kicked off the fucking.
I
Russia
actually thought
investigation.
that Hillary Clinton's tweet about that was, I mean, however you feel about her, woo!
Yeah, no, Hillary is good at throwing some shade. I'll give it to her. I mean, shit, that's twice now.
She's
that I've
she's
complimented
That's a
her.
skill she's always had.
She's the cat in the memes with the screaming lady.
Yeah,
with the
I
cats.
mean, I'm sure she's having a damn ball right now. She's got to be. Oh, Hillary, I need you to go away, Hillary. But
Here's a question. I got a question for you. If it okay, let's say it gets through the House, like the House goes ahead and does it, and goes to the Senate, and you know the Republicans play hardball because they got to play hardball about it. But like, how invested is Mitch Daniels really in this presidency? I know he's come to bat for him because he has to because of the base and all that. But like,
Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
Mitch Daniels.
did I say Mitch
late of
Connell?
Purdue.
I meant Mitch Connell.
Wait, no. Oh,
I'm-
sorry.
I meant Mitch McConnell. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
How invested is Mitch McConnell in this guy? Like, like, would he, like, even the teensiest bit just kind of stand back and let it happen? I don't know.
No.
Like,
No,
I always
he's
suspect
also
that
up.
a teensy
He's
bit.
also up for re-election this year in Kentucky,
Yeah,
No way.
Uh,
Yeah, he's up for re-election.
and he's got he'll win, but he has a tough challenger in Amy McGrath, who's a big-time fundraiser. She's very popular nationwide.
It'd be nice if they fucking took him down, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not going to happen.
it's not
But
gonna
if he comes out against Trump, that's really going to hurt him in
Yeah,
Kentucky.
yeah.
Well, no,
So-
I'm not talking about coming out against. I'm talking about just like kind
one
of
of the
vaguely
things-
letting it happen. That's all.
RJ, one of the things that I just thought of though is, McConnell's deeply unpopular in Kentucky, but he wins. Trump did win Kentucky by Sunday night. I think this is a ludicrous number, but I don't think I'm wrong. It's like 30 points.
30
Yeah,
points. Yeah.
something.
Tennessee went about roughly 30 points. Trump too.
But
He'll go like 45.
the reason why Mitch McConnell can be deeply unpopular in Kentucky and still win is because one of his big selling points is I'm the senior, person on the Senate. The amount of power that I have, you elect someone new, they aren't that person in the Senate. They're not the one where, the buck stops with me. I got that desk and I have that office.
Exactly.
And that is and the thing is he's shown that he's able to utilize that power pretty effectively for, the conservative values, for example, with the Supreme Court in Garland. That was a
perfect example.
what they're going to view as an extreme win. And I think that little Moscow turtle Mitch guy, I don't think that he's going to flex his actual political power and scheming, but I'd say there's maybe a 15% chance he might.
That makes my heart glow. You saying that, Haley? Thank you.
But no, Haley's exactly right about that one thing about specifically the Supreme Court issue. A lot of voters in this day and age, especially the useful idiots, like the main people who vote and baby boomers, all this shit, they all vote on one button issues almost all the time: abortion, guns, things like that. Those Supreme Court picks are massive. Mitch will hold on to his Senate seat simply because not only did he deny Obama,
you've heard me lament the complete horse fucking of the Supreme Court.
But not only to do all that,
for the next 30 plus years,
they have
yes,
packed the federal judiciary.
Oh yeah,
Trump's nominees. I mean, he's got hundreds of judges he's seating.
Right,
and tens of them have been called not suitable to be judges by the ABA.
Yep.
And
now the ABA is. What happened with that? I think I saw something recently where they're not welcome to comment or something like that. Like the White House is now no longer accepting their.
They're trying to shut them out of the process because they're.
I got a question. When RJ says that tens of them are not qualified, is that tens of the candidates or the people who actually got confirmed?
Well, actually, they're the same. They're the same thing. There's no difference.
Yeah,
there aren't candidates that don't get confirmed.
They're nominees, and they all get confirmed.
There was
I don't
one.
like every now and then I hear about like some really egregious asshole getting blocked, but it must be only the really egregious assholes.
You know what you mean?
There
Yeah,
was
that makes
one
sense.
that was blocked.
Yeah, Haley was saying the same thing I was. Is that there was one that was so fucking unqualified that they were just like, no.
It was like a 32-year-old that had only written like papers.
There was a
about
32-year-old.
That's the one I was thinking of.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm a 32-year-old, but it was a 32-year-old who's never done a jury trial and only done transactional law. And I'm like,
mostly
oh, man,
they've written a few papers
judge yet, but
that were
I've
like-
at least done some trials.
And it was seriously just that one guy that they stopped. Wow. Okay. Cool.
But yeah,
I mean, not cool, but just confirming.
Yeah,
It was basically like if someone appointed me to a federal appellate court. I mean, honestly, I've done jury trials and all this. I mean,
It would be somebody
all the
much less
time, but-
experienced.
No, it wasn't. I mean,
Spouses enough
because he didn't even do that.
right-wing
Yeah, but I mean,
Yes.
I would consider myself highly.
I mean, honestly, it'd be like
federal appellate
appointing Dave. No offense, Dave.
judge.
None
You
taken.
wouldn't.
No, if you want to make an example of a bad appointment, say like appointing Casey. I will take that hit.
There you go. They basically appointed if my dog was a fan of the Federalist Society and they appointed.
But I mean,
Mike
you're
Shaw.
appointed
This
to
is
be a
pretty much
judge
what we're
over
talking about.
trials,
I mean, my
and you've
literal
never done a trial.
Exactly.
Canine
Yeah.
companion,
No, and
yes.
well, we
That's
had this
it.
issue around
He's never
here,
done a
so
trial. He was up for a job as a trial judge.
We actually had we had that not terribly long ago in this area with a circuit court judge who was running, and the circuit court judge almost won, or the guy who was running for it, but yeah, he was had done a few jury trials, but his dad was
We
really.
were talking about Mitch McConnell and the fact that he's not going anywhere.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah,
Well, and the reason I think the reason we were talking about him not going anywhere is because I suggested he might like kind of sit back and let Senate impeachment happen. I was just suggesting that as a base, and because he's so secure.
The reason,
I'm getting the consensus that he wouldn't.
Why I threw out that 15%, odds, I actually it's probably a lot lower. It's probably closer to 7.
Oh well, yeah.
But it's because both Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham are up for re-election this year. Both Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham are from states that went for Trump by extremely large amounts. And you've seen Lindsey Graham and Mitch be pretty much on the same page in their staunch defense of Trump. And I would say that right now, Lindsey Graham is severely further up Trump's ass than Mitch McConnell. Mm-hmm. And that just gives me a dash of a pause.
I mean, Lindsey Graham.
That's the same one. I have the exact same pause as Haley. I complete agreement.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
not that Haley cares, but that's what I was trying to say, and she said way better than me.
Guys, if I may, our friend of the firmament, Chris, has been quiet this entire evening, more or less. I don't know if he's still there or listening, but I just kind of want to ping him right now to see if he's around, because I kind of want to hear his take, because we've talked about a lot of things, and I would really like to hear from him.
No, I've been enjoying it. I've been following along. So.
Well, good deal. What do you think? So,
y'all are gonna get your asses kicked by Trump in the election.
Okay. Well, if he makes it that far.
I'm sorry. I'm just.
I think
no, it's okay. But no, Chris. Actually, I wanted to talk to you. I think you and I had an exchange on somebody's post. If it was David's, RJ's, somebody's. And it seemed like you had a loose grasp of what the facts were with Burisma, and how it relates to this. So, basically, I'd like to hear your take on what Donald Trump's defense is here. I mean, we've all been talking about what the Democrats have been saying and what these witnesses have put out. But what would you do, I guess, to try to defend this and say you shouldn't impeach the man over it?
Good, yeah. I would say that quid pro quos are not illegal, and they happen all the time, and we know Biden did one. Mm-hmm. That's a fact, right? We agree on that?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, he admitted
okay.
it. Okay,
just making sure. World. And then you would spin the case to where you can't nail him on any hard facts, and you can't prove that he was trying to dig dirt on Biden for the election. You can totally run it that he was looking into corruption in the Ukraine in general. And Biden just happened to be part of that. So the truth has to come out.
Okay, I mean, that's pretty simplified, but do you actually believe that defense? Or do you think that's just the best defense to rely on?
I believe in the middle. I believe that he really is concerned about the corruption of the Ukraine to know what's going on, because he's a narcissist and wants to know why he's not a player in the Ukraine and Russia, like the Democrats are.
Okay. No, I mean, I can see that.
He's not invited to the big boy table of
okay.
big money billionaire oligarchs and types.
Can we touch on what I really wanted to touch on really quickly was quid pro quos. There's nothing wrong with a quid pro quo per se, like just in general. Yes, that's how we run foreign policy. That's how every country runs foreign policy with other countries. It's usually, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine.
If you do this thing, then I will do this
exactly.
thing.
Right, it's this for that. It's capitalism.
Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trading you something, essentially. That's how business works. Exactly what Haley said. It's capitalism. It's the idea of
Yeah, it's just you have to. Who are you trading for, America or yourself?
Yeah.
Personal political gain is the factor, and I'm sorry you guys were getting to that, but like and that's what they're trying to prove, and like us in this room, like yeah, it's just like when you read the headlines, they won't just come out and tell you, and that's kind of frustrating.
But I'm sorry, Chris. What I was trying to get at, it was exactly kind of what Casey touched on. There is the difference between what Biden did. Is that you could make an argument there was personal gain because his son kept his job, I guess. Maybe. Yeah, he didn't get fired from Burisma or didn't get prosecuted. You can make that argument, but that doesn't defend what Donald Trump did.
I want to show you my whiteboard real fast.
Sure.
Please do.
But that doesn't.
I want a whiteboard. Why don't we have a whiteboard?
But what I was trying to say was that Burisma and Biden's conduct and all that really is not a defense to the charges against Donald Trump. None of that has anything to do with the price of tea in China, essentially.
If you're asking me personally,
well, I mean also, like the whole thing that you said, like that they can have the defense that he was actually interested in corruption. We saw a lot of public hearings this week. And one of the big things, so I mean, you got, I don't know, like 8 or 9 witnesses, and they're all saying that it was, it was because it was, I have this firsthand knowledge, it wasn't because of this, it was like he wanted the investigations.
Yeah, was David Holmes, was he Vindland's, or no, or Volker, who's,
David Holmes is Taylor's guy.
Okay, you're right. Okay, so
Holmes and Taylor are so credible together, and the ambassador. Like, I mean,
What do you mean, Sondland?
No, I'm talking about
Yovanovitch.
Yannick. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
Well, no, I'm speaking specifically about Donald Trump not giving a shit about Ukraine or anything else. He just wants Biden investigated. Holmes testified that conversation happened. Taylor testified that Holmes told him about it. Sondland said, I don't remember that.
Sondland specifically said that's not something I would say, and that he would have phrased it differently. He specifically said, I would not have said that. That was kind of that struck me when he said that. I don't.
Yeah,
Zelensky says it didn't happen.
But Zelensky said he didn't feel any pressure, and also Zelensky's trying to stay the fuck out of this.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with that.
Yeah.
So if I could, I was trying to make an analogy to James before we started here tonight. Zelensky is like the guy who's being held hostage, and the police come to the door, and the guy holding him hostage is like got a gun to his back while he answers the door, like when the cops are there, and he's like, everything's fine. Yeah, we're fine here. We're all, this is like Clue when the police come in and they're like dancing with the corpse. Like it's.
Hey, let me ask this. I want to ask this question because I'm trying to boil it down.
Sure.
Like, do y'all really think that Trump needed this? He risked all this just to get some campaign dirt on Biden.
Yes.
No, I don't.
Yes.
I don't think that he's smart enough to know that this was as big of a deal as it is. I think that in Trump's world, he thinks that it should be okay for him as president to use the power of his office to dig up dirt on political enemies. I think that he would actually say that is something that is okay, and I wouldn't be surprised if that eventually becomes the defense once there are enough people testifying that this is actually what happened.
So, RJ,
I actually can really agree with that. Like, I don't think he conjured this up. Like, I totally agree. Like, he's like, oh shit.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't think I don't think he thought he needed anything either. I don't think he was smart enough to see that it was this big of a risk. I also don't think that he's ever going to get to that point where he gets there. He's gonna be like, no, I can do it. And also, no, I don't. It's and that's because I also don't think that he really thought I really need the Ukrainian president to talk shit about Joe Biden, what he was like is, I really want him to. Like, I'm not going to risk this. I don't fathom this being such a big risk, but I need this. So I'm going to make this huge risk because I really, really deeply need this other thing. I think he was like, I want this. And I didn't realize it was this bad,
Right. I agree with that. I also agree with RJ. The thing I wanted to add, to my knowledge, and someone feel free to fact check me on this, in the 2016 election, the two biggest bumps that Trump got to his polling numbers, and really the only thing that really moved the needle ever, were the two times James Comey came out talking about investigations into Hillary Clinton. First, some months before the election, and then days right before election day, Comey said he was reinvestigating Hillary Clinton for some other, whatever the fuck it was,
he found.
butter emails.
Hillary's dirty as all
Right,
get out
which
with
is-
the Ukraine and Russia.
We all
Okay,
know
And
that.
if don't believe,
Chris.
and
we're not going to get into it.
Yeah.
That's
Julian
it's
Assange,
immaterial to the
WikiLeaks.
point.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm
we
not
all
disagreeing
agree.
with you, but it's immaterial to the point. The point is Trump noticed these
not.
things. But I'm saying he saw bumps in the polls relating to Comey saying, I'm investigating
Investigations.
his political opponent. So what he wanted was from Zelensky was to say, not to actually really investigate Hunter and Joe Biden,
Because Sondland
but to
confirmed that.
say there was going to be an investigation.
And I think that it's an interesting point. He can't ask the State Department to do that because they would, like one
Right.
has already been done, and and maybe he did, and that's why we weren't getting any documents from them.
look, there's a
Right.
real possibility that some real bombshells on the Republican side are going to come out about the Ukraine and Burisma, and it's going to level Biden and a lot of Democrats.
And
Well,
I mean, sure.
Y'all are
a lot
gonna
of
y'all can
the
call it
bombshells
conspiracy.
about
Wait,
Biden-
Hunter have already come
I
out.
got
That guy's
this,
kind of
guys.
just a
We've all
sleaze
talked-
bag. It's just irrelevant.
Casey, we've all talked a whole lot. I want to hear what Chris is saying.
I'm sorry.
So,
I think you got to look more at Burisma first, and then you got to look at what just happened recently.
okay.
You got Hunter Biden getting over $3 million in financial records from Burisma.
Mm-hmm.
You got Burisma officials meeting with Ukraine officials right after Biden forced the firing of Shokin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is that not fishy? Is that not a flag right there? Okay, they try to secure a meeting with the brand new prosecutor, Lysenko, right? The same day they fire Shokin.
Mm-hmm.
In the month of February, Biden calls the Ukraine president, Poroshenko, 3 times. And he does it right after the owner of Burisma's office is raided, and they raid his house and get all his files and stuff. And then Hunter and Devin Archer freak the fuck out and start calling the State Department right after that.
Mm-hmm.
But
So-
none of this is dirty.
So, hang on. What you're suggesting there, based on those, I guess, events or that chain of events, is that the Bidens are trying to cover for other Democrats who had money tied up in this money laundering scheme or something?
I think
They're
it goes.
covering for
I
Hunter.
think it goes back to Hillary for sure, and it's gonna. I think there's proof that the Democrats are guilty of everything they're accusing Trump of, but worse.
Okay. So,
How about this?
Okay,
Look.
hang on. Let me.
Okay,
let me
wait.
add-
Let's
let
just
me
do
add
this.
one
Let's
thing.
just
I
do
wanna
this one
add
thing.
2 more little things, RJ. Hang on.
Go
Okay,
ahead,
go
go
ahead.
ahead, Chris.
There's also this week. 2 members of Ukrainian parliament are pushing to reopen the investigation into Burisma and Hunter Biden on new
they
evidence that's
certainly
come
are.
out.
Yep, they're pro-Russian. That's the thing from Zero Hedge I was talking about earlier before we were on air.
Zero hedge.
Yeah, I know. That's why I didn't share it. 'cause
Now,
I knew I
look,
wouldn't
I
get
am
all the
totally
shit, but-
open to that. Like Trump and Giuliani are trying to now spread the spin. And okay, maybe, yeah, definitely. I'm not a Trump supporter. I didn't vote for the fucker. But I'm telling you, to me, the Democrats are just as fucking dirty. That's my
believe
whole
they are.
issue.
Well, I mean,
Everything's
I think
just
that you
better.
keep on saying the word Hillary and then you say Democrats and they're all going down. And before RJ gets into it, I just want to say that, I find that kind of strange.
Well,
a lot of
That's a
right-wing
good
reporting-
That's a good point.
That's just it. You're saying, I think Hillary's
just me
dirty. I
being
think the
hyperbole.
Democrats are about to get stomped. I think the Democrats are dirty. It seems like you're interchanging.
A lot of
but-
Okay.
Well,
I have consumed far too much bullshit clips of news from every source I could find, like
Yeah.
from CNN to Fox to MSN to
And I gotta
Pac-Man.
say,
Give me a second. I was going to say that
So give me a
to
break.
answer Haley's concern there is that right-wing media, the more dubious ends are suggesting that Pelosi and Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton are all tied up in Ukrainian finances.
Yeah,
Well,
they all
the
just have
Clinton
like
initiative
big
gets tons of money from
billboard-sized
Ukraine.
Godzillas of Pelosi and Hillary with the word socialism and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and yeah.
No, I know. I understand.
Well, no, if we're
Yeah,
going to talk
yeah.
about big, broad conspiracy theory,
But,
right-wing stuff, then let's talk about the
get back to
legit part of
point.
it.
Let's get back to what we were talking about.
Well, I want to address what the. I'm sorry, Chris. Is that the guy that we're talking to right now?
that's the guy,
yes,
yeah.
Over here in the guitar,
Yeah.
on his
Yeah.
on as his emblem.
Desmond.
Like, and I only know what I see on Twitter, so you know. But like, as far as I've seen that Ukraine is one of the big donators of the Clinton initiative. Now everyone's tired of hearing about that, and they should be. They really should be. But like that's foreign interest. That is, I have a big charity with my name on it, and you've given me a ton of money. And people like to draw their little Charlie in the mailroom lines between that stuff. And you can't not, because that's money. That talks. It's just like, how clear is it? How real is it? Like, I don't like, even if it is real, can you even like actually dig into it and reveal it to everyone? And I'm gonna mute my mic now.
I understand what you're saying. Actually, I want to go back to RJ because I had a really important question way back before we got in this rabbit hole. RJ, were you suggesting, or were you hinting at the third essential element in bribery? Corrupt
Thank
intent.
you for getting back there.
Yeah,
by the way,
were you
I meant
hinting
to.
at corrupt intent, and were you specifically hinting at the idea that Donald Trump is too stupid to understand the corrupt intent of soliciting a bribe from Ukraine or
No.
to Ukraine?
No.
The same way
I think
Don
that he
Jr.
had.
is.
I think that he had the corrupt intent that's necessary. It's not much of a corrupt intent that is necessary. I don't think that he was smart enough to understand. For example, one of the many Republican lines that's being thrown against the wall like spaghetti right now is that because the president sets foreign policy, you can't say that Trump investigating a political opponent is against American foreign policy and is only his for his own personal gain, because whatever he says is inherently American foreign policy. I think that he probably believes that.
So, but I mean that's essentially the same reason there wasn't corrupt intent when Don Jr. met with the Russians. When
Don Jr. met with the Russians, he just didn't pick up what they were putting down.
No,
There was nothing to pick up here.
What
This
Mueller
was
said was that he was too stupid, basically, to realize that that would be a campaign
The point
violation.
he's making is, after 3 years of investigation, how could Donald Trump not
Claim,
realize
that this
what
exact
he's
law
doing-
you're breaking.
It's a role. They're in different settings in both of those. That's not mirror analogies.
right. What I'm saying is that
Not
I
quite,
don't think
no.
that Trump understood the gravity of what he was doing when he was asking for dirt on Biden. I'm not saying that it was not with corrupt intent. I'm saying I think that to him that's just a normal transaction.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm exactly saying. That's exactly what Mueller said, basically, about Don Jr.
No,
was that-
what Mueller
no,
said
but
is he didn't realize that they were trying to get
To bribe
do
him,
that.
yeah, that
Yeah,
was different.
so like versus I know what I'm doing. Like I know that I'm trying to get
Mueller
them
also
to say
he's
investigations because I
trying-
want it to benefit me. Like I'm but I just don't think that it's really that criminal, which
Mueller-
is what he's in the position of the Russians in the Donald Trump Jr. Tower meeting. I want to give you, I'd like to have this happen, and Donald Trump Jr. is just like, all right, like I don't
The bunnies and
understand that
whatnot.
you're trying to push me.
I think that they're lying, and that's basically what Mueller was saying too when he explores it, was that it's really hard to prove the corrupt intent in that, specifically because we can't prove Don Jr. knew that would be a campaign violation. Like, he didn't
Oh, sure, and
know.
I don't
Right.
I don't necessarily disagree with you. I think that one of the other important points here is that we're not talking about a violation of a law. We're talking about the sphere of impeachment.
Sure, but I mean, that's why I asked you specifically about corrupt intent and going back.
Right,
to
and I would say that they are slightly different. I don't think it's a bad point. I mean, I think that it is possible to have an argument along those lines, but my response is that Trump understood the corrupt intent, but to Trump, that sort of corrupt intent is like a way of doing business. And so it would not stand out to him as something that could cause this problem.
Literally a day before the Mueller report came out, nothing bad happened to him, right?
Mueller testified at length about this one fucking thing.
Right, yeah, about the kind of thing, the type of action
and Donald Trump made it very clear that he watched that.
That he, in fact, did and didn't get in trouble for. So why not do it again the next day? Because clearly that is fine. Like,
right, and that's what I'm saying. That doesn't cure corruption.
Saying WikiLeaks, even if I didn't talk to WikiLeaks or actually do it, that's fine. So yeah, why don't I call the Ukrainian president now and
do it some more? Right? Yeah, that's
another thing you got to think about too. I've really taken in a lot of different sources. There's good evidence. It seems like I think one of the colonels or lieutenant colonel testified in the hearing.
Vindman.
Trump was getting fed a ton of bullshit by, and I'm too ignorant to know, like his cabinet, his second intelligence committee, whatever you call it. I don't know. Like it's like he don't trust the normal procedure departments or the normal go-tos.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes.
And
kind of.
And it's not just you can't, as stupid as he is, you can't just that's why I think Ukraine is such a waste, because you can go back and find the Politico and other source articles from several years ago clearly writing about corruption in the Ukraine and rigged elections favoring the Democrats in 2016. So Trump has a real severed relationship with the Ukraine.
Yeah, there are a couple things there. One of them is the articles that you're referring to don't have much to do with anything other than corruption in the Ukraine. The idea that the Ukraine was somehow operating as a nation in favor of the Democrats in 2016 is just a Russian talking point. Mm-hmm. I have no doubt that there were individual Ukrainians, who maybe even some officials in the Ukrainian government wanted something good or bad to happen to Trump or good to happen for Hillary Clinton. That's fine. That's not the same thing as the Ukraine operating that way. That's not the same thing as Russian intelligence.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I hear you. I'm just going by. I'm just telling you what the articles are saying. They're not saying it. They're saying Ukraine corruption.
Right. No, and no one doubts that the Ukraine is corrupt. We heard it a bunch of times over the past 2 weeks in these public hearings. There's a lot of corruption in the Ukraine. After the Soviet Union fell, the entire idea of the reason that we use the term oligarch in normal conversation now is mostly because of the fall of the Soviet Union. Yep. That is something that is
that and the reality of our American post-capitalist life. But yeah,
but we probably
where the
wouldn't
word came from is what Archie's saying.
Yeah.
So my understanding, and I know there's a good friend of mine, old time buddy of mine, who is Russian and grew up in Russia as a young kid and ended up traveling abroad and stuff. The way he explained it to me, and the way I've always understood, is when the Soviet Union collapsed, the people who were part of the Communist Party, the people who were company men, so to speak, who were in charge of various industries, is it gas, is it oil, is it, steel, whatever it is that they were producing, whatever industrial goods were being produced.
They're called committees, but yeah.
Right. So these people who were more or less in charge of this.
Black market blue jeans, I believe, is the big market.
Oh, gosh. So the people who were in power in these positions, when they transferred to a more capitalist type society, the same people still rose to the top. The same people were still in charge of these. Now they're just, now it's just private. They're just private business, right?
Yep.
You literally went from being the appointed government Politburo guy in charge of phosphorus or whatever to being the mogul in charge of phosphorus because you were the guy sitting in the desk.
And
that's how all that went. It was very clean.
Right. Yeah, no. So, the expression for Russians is, new Russia, same old thieves. These are the people they were talking about. These are the people who were/are the oligarchs. Right?
Well, the Soviet system never actually ascended into real communism. It was just the Tsarist Russia
Absolutely.
with
We're
a
not gonna get
different
into that.
Xi. So
I agree
We're not
with
gonna
you.
get into that.
Stop. We're not doing that.
I do agree with you,
absolutely
Casey, but yeah,
refuse,
we're not going to go there.
We're not even going close to that. But this is something that Chris was specifically interested in, and the head of Burisma, who's Zelensky. I can't even try to pronounce his name.
Boris.
Yeah, the head of Burisma is one of these people. Like, he is one of the oligarchs, essentially, or at least he was under one.
Yeah,
Actually,
he is.
But I mean, and they fled to Russia.
He's a Russian-based oligarch, and he had to flee the Ukraine a few years ago back to Russia during the presidential change.
Yes, that is.
But
correct.
they're back in Russia.
Nope, yeah, that is absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Yes, and what I'm trying to say is that it is absolutely fair and right to be suspicious of someone like that. You know,
I mean, y'all realize that, I mean, Ukraine and specifically Kiev or Kyiv, however you want to pronounce it, those are both proper ways.
Correct.
Like that, I was watching Jeopardy the other day, and the question was, it was a double Jeopardy question, and it was like, you know, the European cities or something was the category, and it was like, this was the breadbasket of Russian culture for like these years in 1800 or maybe a little bit earlier, and I, of course, at home was like, Moscow, and it was Kiev, and you know, you kind of forget that, like it was Russia.
historically, they think of it as part of themselves, as in separately as we would the South of the United States. Like
some of them do. That needs
a lot of
very
them
big-
do.
No,
Right.
it's-
Yeah, but I mean,
We're
like,
getting
that was
really
also when
far.
they.
I'm not-
and then
I'm not
they-
trying to be a
but
Russian
they
nationalist
broke
by
away
pointing out to you
because
that a
of,
lot
like,
of Russians say
the-
that.
They broke away because of the Tsar shit. They got tired of the Tsars. That's like.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But anyway, really to tie this all back together, I guess, our issue is Burisma is a clusterfuck. We can all agree that the Biden thing looks shady. Doesn't mean something bad happened. Doesn't mean it did. It didn't mean it didn't. But it has nothing
Well,
to
I
actually
would like-
do with the impeachment.
Hey, can I put just two more little facts on Burisma?
Sure.
Don't forget, because David, I've heard you say it before. Like, the case was shut down. It was a nothing burger. You know, they were moved on. Ship had sailed.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, Poroshenko, right? No. God dang it! The first prosecutor that got fired
Shokin.
by
Shokin, yes.
Shokin had just reopened the case into Burisma.
No, he
And
hadn't.
that's when the pressure hit, and it's like, oh shit,
No,
Hunter
Shokin-
Biden's on there. You can't do this.
Hang on a
That's not
second.
what happened.
Yeah, that's Shokin did not reopen an investigation. Shokin was slow walking an investigation into Burisma and
Okay,
also
correct.
multiple other
It was never shut down.
Yeah. Exactly.
oligarchs organizations, allegations of corruption all over the place. Shokin was regarded by the United States, by the IMF, by the EU, by the UK as being corrupt and
Essentially being on the take.
and not.
I mean, so
probably
but,
being on the
but,
take.
like,
I think
Okay,
his
but
job-
then he was
You need to
cleared. He
realize-
was later cleared by Lysenko, who is now the good
big,
prosecutor, right?
y'all have to have an understanding of something big picture first, which
But you
is
also got to
Ukraine.
look too.
Guys, one at a time, please.
I'm sorry. Go
Big-
ahead, Haley.
Like big picture, Ukraine used to be what would be, you know, Russia, very much so.
Correct.
US.
And it has broken away, and it doesn't
Yes.
want to do that anymore. However, it has deep, deep cultural ties, very similar language, and those thieves that are running Russia can do the same thing in Ukraine, which has allotted for rampant corruption. Like, that's
Correct.
why all these people flee back to Russia whenever crap goes down.
Absolutely, I'm
Um,
with you.
So
So I think that you need to have a big picture understanding of that, because, you know, like, Ukrainian corruption is what that really basically means is, you know, infiltrations by Russia to re-annex the entire country as
Correct.
Russia.
yeah, I mean,
Yes, Russia
Real
wants
quick.
to get it back. The whole Western world wants to prop up that democracy to fight against the Russian aggression. So, yeah, I'm with you. But
I would like to add
the
on
whole
to
world
Chris's
wants
point.
people who want democracy to be able to have it and doesn't want other countries to be able to,
if we could all stay on topic, what are you trying to say, Casey?
I'll try to keep it brief. We're like, I'm not saying that it's going down right now with Ukraine, although maybe it is. We're entering a period of U.S. foreign policy where the rest of the world is very aware that either American party has an entirely alternate foreign policy. We, like, in the last debate, we had multiple Democratic candidates saying, we're going to stop selling weapons to Saudi Arabia. That's a massive break from what we do now and not what the Republicans want to do at all. So now all of a sudden, you're going to have the Saudis having a meeting. You know the Saudis are having a meeting right fucking now about, well, if the Democrats win this election, what are we going to do?
We're not talking about Saudi Arabia, but I understand what your point is.
No. I'm saying that it's going that logic is going to start affecting the decisions of every other country. Where if they know that either party has an entirely opposite foreign policy, that's going to get weird. And that's all I got to say about it. That's going to get weird.
Hey, one more fact about Burisma real fast. Lysenko, I just want to put it on the record. Lysenko is on the record of saying that Ivanovich gave him a do not prosecute list.
Yeah, he retracted that.
He did not.
Oh, I'll read to you.
He did. I know what you're referring to, and he totally retracted it.
I
but
actually posted about it in Fermenting Opinions yesterday.
Yeah, I had 2 points I wanted to make from much earlier.
Please do.
One is that Chris, while I understand that you have a lot of thoughts that are sourced from a lot of different places about Burisma, about all of the different ways that Ukrainian corruption may have touched different Democratic nominees now or in the past. I think that the underlying problem with that line is that none of that affects the impeachment inquiry. The impeachment inquiry still stands on its own. All of those things could be true, and yet it would not affect whether or not Donald Trump, acting in his own political interest, were withholding already apportioned American aid to the Ukraine based on those investigations or on a meeting in the White House or what have you. The second point that I wanted to make was that zero hedge was mentioned, and I hate zero hedge. And so I wanted to point out that if you're ever taking your news from someone who didn't know the right way to watch Fight Club, you can just disregard everything they're saying.
Okay, RJ, I want to ask you something specifically, because this is something I've been curious about, and honestly, since impeachment, the trial, the actual removal trial, will be more of a political process than it is a criminal one. Like, say, rules of evidence are kind of a little looser.
Depends.
Due process pretty much attaches. Like, you're going to have, normal criminal rights. Like,
well, it depends on what the Senate passes
Well,
as the
rules.
rules.
Yes, but
It's not a criminal trial.
I know exactly, but
I agree with you in general.
You're going to get cross-examination. You're going to get
right.
They're
You're
gonna
going to
make
get counsel. You'll have a right to counsel. Exactly. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, normal stuff. What I was going to ask about that is,
do you think the narrator of Fight Club was the hero of the story? No, I do not.
Hey, RJ, James.
Hang on, seriously.
Can I ask this real fast?
No, I really want to
Let
ask
James
this.
get it out.
It was the girlfriend the whole time.
Shut up.
Fucking Marla.
Anyway,
All right, go ahead.
Yes, it was Marla. She was the hero.
Oh my God.
It's
Just so we're done.
Ask you, RJ, is
All right,
what do you think?
James, just ask your question. Don't get mad.
Yes. What do you think of the idea that this entire story about Biden and Burisma as an actual excuse to say that there was national interest in Trump withholding aid?
Yes, that's what they're going to push.
I mean, that's kind of what everyone's pushing on the Republican side. I know it's a fucking
Can't
stretch,
trust
in
them.
my opinion.
Right. No, but even if it were true, it wouldn't be in the national interest. And we know that it wasn't in the national interest because everyone who's testified from the State Department has said, here are the goals of American foreign policy in the Ukraine. And here is what we were doing.
What?
This is the whole point of Taylor's testimony about the irregular channels of foreign policy in the Ukraine. And so Trump cannot unilaterally decide that something that is in his own personal interest is suddenly now also the national interest.
But why?
Let me tell you real quick.
No, why wouldn't anti-corruption investigations be in the national interest?
Anti-corruption
Because he
interest.
didn't have a basic
Wait.
No,
Anti-corruption,
no.
sure, they would be, but that's not what he asked for.
But I mean,
what he asked for was an announcement of an investigation into
Of a specific asshole.
A specific anti-corruption.
But no. What y'all aren't understanding in a point. So he didn't ask the CIA, the FBI, the State Department, the DOJ. He didn't ask any American agency to do this kind of work, and he didn't know. He doesn't know about the investigative procedure and everything. And so if he actually wants an investigation into corruption, he should have utilized the resources at his very, very quick disposal that are very, very vast, rather than asking, you really want someone to investigate Burisma and the Bidens and corruption? You have a plethora of resources at your fingertips. Go for it.
Haley, I completely agree with you.
But if you want a foreign government that you have no control over, and that you have no actual, you set no parameters, you just say the word "look into the Bidens." Like, what does that even mean? Like, no, I want you to actually consider that. Like, there's no parameters, there's no scope. Like, what are you even saying? That's how you can.
I'm sorry. When I asked that question, it was just in the idea of using it as a general defense, because I mean that's the
counter. He didn't want an investigation.
Yeah, I know. And what I'm saying is, looking at it from the Republican side, if you're really trying to defend Donald Trump, that's the best I've got.
Right, and I agree with you. I think that is the burgeoning new line, right? That they're all kind of coalescing around because everything else got torpedoed this week.
But what I was trying to say is, Chris, after all of this discussion, especially what Haley just said, because to me, I agree with Haley. She brought up a great point. What do you have to say to that? The idea that he should have gone through other channels instead of, sending his own personal attorney and doing this back channel stuff and this pressure campaign that people are alleging.
Oh man,
sorry about that. Sorry, I had to plug. No, I mean, I think there is a lot of truth there from what I'm hearing, because I think he and his inner cabinet did not trust a lot of these outlets, and and I think he has some decent reasons not to an extent. I gotta say, it goes right back to that last point I was making. Here's one example. If I'm telling you, I got it right here in front of me right now. New York Times. Lysenko did not retract that story. That was a mistake by the Times, and then they've corrected it. Ivanovich gave him a do not prosecute list.
What's the date on that article?
It
was like from the other week.
So, and Chris, I appreciate that you're like looking at sources now and everything. Okay, if you're gonna push to the point of like, well, he didn't trust those those channels or whatever, and he had good reason to. So, okay, then that means he had an understanding of their investigation process and the directives that he would give, and so then what does he do? Like, what kind of, he doesn't have any kind of scope. He doesn't have any kind of parameters. This is, hey, I want an announcement about Biden, not in like, so.
Haley, if I may, really quick, for an analogy to what you're trying to say. It sounds to me like if you don't trust, these agencies, the proper channels, it's kind of like, well, this guy raped my sister, and I don't trust the cops to investigate him. They're dirty, so I'm going to hire this hitman to kill him. Is that still a problem?
Look, let me look at.
No.
I think one thing that Haley is getting at is the quid pro quo is so strongly suggested by him completely getting away from, like, he has direct authority over these governmental functionaries that he can order to investigate people if he damn well pleases. But because he doesn't have that ability to order the head of state of another frigging country directly to do something, except for the fact that we give them all our military aid, that's quid pro quo. And that's like so blatantly there's a suggestion of, if you don't do this, you are fucked. Like,
No,
if he's ordering his own people, he's saying, if you don't do this, you're fired because you're a bad bureaucrat.
Yeah, hang on, Haley, what are you saying?
It's even more basic. It's just like he's concerned. He's concerned about corruption. He has like 8 different agencies with thousands of attorneys that he can pretty much snap his fingers and have them look into exactly that. He can. You know what? You're right. He doesn't trust those channels, though. All of them? Really? Okay. You know, pretty sure he trusts the DOJ, but all right. Okay, if that's what you're going with, I'll hand it to you.
No, I don't think he does.
He doesn't trust the DOJ.
No, he
What's
doesn't
he doing? Is he actually asking for something that's concerned about corruption? You know, let's hit a point. Did he ever even say the word corruption? No, I want you to look into the Bidens. I don't think the word corruption ever came up. What are the parameters of this investigation that he's setting? But now I'm getting heated because I just keep on finding these arguments that are counter to it bullshit. But anyway.
Yeah, and also I think it's really important to discuss
Everybody
the
be cool.
timeline of what happened with these prosecutors and the Burisma case in general. And I've got Lutsenko doing a very in-depth article in late May. Quoting directly from Lutsenko, Biden was definitely not involved. We do not have any grounds to think there was any wrongdoing starting from 2014. What they're doing with Burisma and this entire case is investigating before Hunter Biden joined the board. There is suspicion, and obviously there's good reason to think something hinky happened. Yeah. This kid who just got booted from the military for testing positive for cocaine, and
he's a general sleazebag.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, but yeah,
he's a spoiled ass rich kid, right?
I mean, he's got
something.
He's got credentials and degrees and shit, but he just got booted from the Navy.
As if that makes you better. Credentials.
I mean, anyway, so he obviously was hired for his name. So were a lot of people on the board. I mean, that's the point of remote people on your board in general, is that it looks cool. We do that all the time. It's a normal thing for corporations to hire people with nice names for their boards. But everything that was being investigated was much more centered on the owner of Burisma, this Zilochenki or whatever.
Boris, yes.
Boris, okay, yeah, whatever.
I don't know his real fucking name, whatever.
Yeah, but
it's Boris,
anyway,
you know what I mean?
okay.
It's Boris.
No, we'll just call him Boris. But anyway, all this is really centered on Boris. What happened was Shokin had the case, kept it open, didn't do shit with it, along with about a handful of other oligarch-involved cases. Didn't do a damn thing. That's why the entire Western world wanted him fired.
Right. I think that is a crucial point. This wasn't Joe Biden decided to step in and help his son. This was
the conclusion of the Western world.
No, and Joe Biden was delivering the message from the U.S., the EU, and the IMF at least.
Yes.
He was not going rogue and making things up on his own to help his son. He was delivering the message from the Western world.
Yeah. Okay. So,
well, are we saying that the message of the Western world was that Hunter Biden needs to keep his cushy spot in a corporation,
no,
or what was this message?
They were saying they need to investigate Burisma.
Please, yes, that not just Burisma.
I'm talking about Biden, not Trump.
Yeah, Biden. Stop. Right. That's what we're trying to tell you. So the prosecutor that Biden pushed to have fired was not investigating corruption. That's the point. Biden was the emissary, essentially, for the Obama administration, who was point man on Ukrainian efforts. So he
went there every 2 months.
To have a prosecutor fired because he wasn't investigating the company his son was working for.
But you're forgetting he started investigating a few weeks before Biden had him fired.
That is ridiculous.
I will look you people up and murder you. I swear to God. Just let me finish my point.
James is on. Let him finish.
I just feel like it needs to be said simply.
Yeah, I'm trying to, but God, when I get interrupted. Okay, so Shokin gets fired. Lutsenko is the next replacement. Lutsenko actually starts investigating. Really can't find shit, but does make $7.4 million or so in civil fines stick against Burisma. Basically, it's like an SEC issue. He's got them on shitty trading on a civil end, but he can't get them on anything criminal. So what he does is he transfers the case to the NABU. The NABU is the National Anti-Corruption Bureau or some shit like that.
Sure.
America helped found it. We have FBI and DOJ offices in their headquarters. They coordinate with us to fight corruption. To this day, the NABU has the goddamn Burisma case that everyone's so hot about. If Donald Trump actually gave a shit and knew what he was doing, all you have to listen. Stop talking. All you have to do. Stop.
James,
All you just for a moment. All you have to do is. All you got to do is direct your attorney general to put pressure on that office to prioritize the Burisma case. Done.
right.
Yeah, that's it. You don't have to bribe anybody and do shit. If you want to
Yeah,
investigate
but
it.
and guess what? And he didn't do that.
No, he didn't. You're
Right.
absolutely right.
That
And
is
that's
the
why
entire-
it's
that
him.
is the
That's
entire
my whole
point.
point.
Yes,
Yes.
it is. Yes, ma'am. And I was just trying to explain the whole process, the details, what's going on, and why it sucks. It's real hinky.
Okay. RJ linked
Something.
thing about the
Dude, you can put
Drew.
text into this? This is
Oh
awesome.
yeah, you can totally. It becomes official record. Drew's already
This is
abused
fucking
it.
tight.
I guess I'm just wondering, like, Chris, I don't understand. I just don't understand what you believe, and or why you believe it. Like, what are you watching? What are you listening to?
It's a good way of putting it.
Chris?
He'll be there. He's probably unmuting. and
I
stuff.
listen to everything.
But what's your position, is what she's asking.
What do you really believe?
Me personally, like I'm
Yes.
agnostic at the moment.
Oh, no. What she's
Wait,
asking
wait.
is about this Trump, this whole
That's the
Ukraine-
worst
You-
answer,
you-
Chris.
You've said some things where you've like called dirty. You've said some things. This
Yeah,
entire time,
every one of
and
these
you've
motherfuckers is
you've
dirty,
gone to
and
some
I don't see
old.
how we can't see
You've
this.
gone to some old facts, and you've actually said a couple of Russian propaganda points.
Big Igloo 2020.
Yeah. There's a bunch of people. Let me put, if I can put it this way, there's a bunch of people here, including myself, who are not really trying to go to bat for Hunter or Joe Biden. Like we're not
Nope.
trying to do that. We're not trying to be that guy. I don't find the facts in support of some big, secretive, corrupt machinations on the part of Joe Biden to protect his son. When there's a very public record to the contrary. I'm not a Joe Biden guy. I'm certainly not a Hunter Biden guy. Like there's I don't know, someone's stomping around there. Sorry about that. But
Yeah.
and even if Hunter and Joe were really corrupt people who did illegal shit, as maybe suggested or pointed out here, it doesn't alleviate the fact that what Trump did would also in this case be illegal and corrupt and potentially impeachable if the political will was there to act on it.
Yes.
And
Someone else's crimes are not your exoneration.
Thank you. That is a very distinct way to put that.
Can I say something without
No, I want to
him
hear
getting pissed?
I want to hear from Chris though. Sorry.
Yeah, I say I'm agnostic personally because I can see both sides to it. I can see a lot of what RJ lays out. But I also every time I try to come to David and RJ's side to the light, and be a smart person, another fucking article gets posted somewhere. And I'm not saying I don't go jump on it like this is the gospel, but I don't rule it out. I try to go dig into it. And
Sure,
so
but you seem to have a interesting take. If you're
because I'm in the middle. I have no dog in
I
this
mean,
fucking fight.
I'm no. it's like I don't know what you mean by middle because
I think the framing of this
I have
conversation is a little bit strange, guys.
I have different views on very different things, and why do you like? Why are you seem to be leaning a certain way?
Because there's open records that have been submitted now that you can look at as sources and see that Burisma gave Hunter Biden $3 million in his financial records. You see Burisma officials meeting with the Ukraine officials right after Biden.
Why is all of this important?
Because it's showing you that there's mass corruption all inside the Ukrainian government, and Trump has every right not to fucking want to send $1 billion taxpayers' aid to him.
Well,
hang on. Yeah, we got to rewind that a little bit. First of all, it's for 391 million if we're going to be technical. But it's not even half a billion. But second of all, that doesn't show that there's mass corruption throughout Ukraine. We already know that. We've been talking about that forever.
Then why the fuck are we sending them money? That's a good question that we should be allowed to talk about.
We're sending them money because it's in our national interest to combat Russia.
Is it? No, I had a point about this about half an hour ago, and I couldn't get a word in edgewise, and now I'm going to pull a little tantrum like you did so I can get a word in.
You're fine.
I think that it's like RJ made a point earlier about how we bring in all of these State Department experts to explain what our foreign policy goals in the Ukraine are. And they're telling us what our foreign policy goals in Ukraine are. And like we, the voter at home, we're being told this. And first of all, if you're the common voter at home, you don't even know where fucking Ukraine is. So why do we have interests there? And like, and the fact that other people are deciding this for us, and we don't really have that much input in it, and this shit that has to do with shit on the other side of the world where the average voter doesn't even fucking know where it is deciding all of this domestic shit over here. People get really resentful of that. And that's just something to be aware of. That's all I wanted to point out.
I think he's got a point here. That, your Rust Belt voter isn't particularly aware or particularly give a shit about any of this, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
who really don't want to
stop and recognize it.
Anyway.
Yeah. So that's it. What's up?
No, that's cool, actually.
Oh.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So what I was going to say was that, a lot of baby boomers and the voting populace in general really don't want to see Russia making aggressive moves that fuck with the free world.
Free world. Are we saying that like super mega corrupt Ukraine is part of this free world?
Yeah.
Is that what we're saying?
Yes, they're trying to be.
That says a lot about the free world.
Okay.
Okay, but wait. Well, I mean, laugh it up, but like, are you trying to argue that Russia is somehow morally superior?
And I'm trying to argue that it's kind of none of our goddamn business if you're an American
I want to step in here. Look, Casey, your point is just completely vacant. We made these decisions when we voted for the people who appropriated this money. If we don't like it, we can vote for different people. Okay.
No, like we are so far removed from these conversations. We don't even know what the conversations are. The average voter doesn't know what the fuck this shit is.
This is not a democracy.
I don't want to have to be studying a bunch of crap about Ukraine to do my own job. I want to be able to vote for representatives.
That's what we do.
My own damn best interest.
Our domestic policy is being driven by shit going on in Ukraine, and that pisses people off.
Okay, and they can piss them off, but you can't say that isn't a reflection of exactly what we did in our democracy, in our representative democracy.
RJ's absolutely right. I mean, Congress foundationally in our Constitution controls our purse strings and decides what we do with appropriation of aid or money or whatever the fuck. Anytime this country spends money, Congress has to approve that.
Okay, and that's cool, and we decided that by voters. But you're pretending that the losing half, the losing 49 to 30% of people, disappeared and aren't pissed. That's all. That just seems what this conversation
is. I'm very anti-interventionalist, actually, but I'm still telling you that Ukraine.
But you're still telling me that we should keep intervening. That's what you're saying, even though that you're anti-interventionalist.
That's what the government is doing.
I'm saying the cocksuckers that are running Congress, and I hate them motherfuckers, and most of them. But those.
But you will defend their dignity at every goddamn turn.
No,
I mean, I'm gonna let them do their job.
No, I can't stop them from doing what they're constitutionally bound to do. I respect the rule of fucking law, Casey.
I respect the rule of law. That we make fun of Trump for using that defense, but that's cool.
Oh,
no, he didn't.
Yeah, but he's
we
using
we are rapidly losing the thread of this conversation.
Yeah.
Here.
No, look.
I want to get some closing comments.
I'm saying people have a right to be pissed about this. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, they can be pissed.
Pissed about what?
Sure,
Okay,
anybody can be
guys.
pissed about anything. Great.
No, pissed about being told what our foreign policy goals
No.
are by a bunch of experts who we had no democratic input on what they are or what their policies are.
Anti-intellectualism in American life won the Pulitzer Prize in 1964.
Oof. Okay, closing comments from everybody.
And that's literally all you have to say as a guy with a PhD or some kind of law degree or whatever, like handed down piece of paper that makes you magically better than everyone. All you have to say is anti-intellectualism is bad, and then everyone like, oh yes, because we should all read more books. And then you're
No, that is my response.
I'm so
to
done
your
with
point.
that shit.
That's my response to your point,
Okay,
Casey.
Hey, yeah. That's been fun and all. Closing
All right.
statements. Let's start with Chris. I'll call on you like a fucking class
All
full
right.
of children.
Right.
All right, hang on.
Hey, I'm happy for you guys to hate me more than Chris. I was tired of us all hating Chris.
Nobody hates you. Man.
I'll give you detention. No one hates you.
I don't hate anybody. I just don't like shouting matches.
I'm just gonna do it in
all.
order. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at an order of people, and
Chris, go ahead.
First, I just want to say I had a lot of fun. So if my passion in the discussion is not personal or anger based, so if I come across that way, I apologize. I respect all y'all. No, I get like on one hand, I guess I've had to take a step back, especially today. I spent 3 hours driving around listening to nothing but CNN, and it was cool. I like Chris Cuomo's perspective. Anyways, I guess like I just find myself, I can't believe I'm taking up for Trump at times almost. But to me, the Democrats are being so hypocritical, and they're not even willing to look really deeper under the surface, in my opinion. Now, maybe I'm stupid. I bought into the Kool-Aid conspiracy, and I just need to come back to reality, and I'll finally see the light.
I just think you're just not as informed on the.
Yeah,
Haley, let him finish. We're doing closing comments on everybody.
Yeah, you're up next, actually, Haley. But yeah, go ahead, Chris.
No, I mean, so that's kind of where I'm at. But I think, yeah, there's a quid pro quo of, and do I think Trump wanted the Biden dirt? Absolutely. I mean, if you're really asking me, of course. But I honestly don't think that was the main thing. I think he really also wanted to know what the hell is going on over here. Can I trust you? Are you my ally? Can I get into this ball field over here for the first time? That's how I see it at the moment. I'm still digging in.
I appreciate your skepticism. Haley, go ahead.
So, I mean, I guess like my interest is, this is something that is complicated to discuss, but there, to me, are some obvious things about it. But it's okay to not like understand the intricacies of how an agency departments work in the government. But, why? So, like, and I'm just not understanding why, how someone doesn't understand a certain point. I move on. I don't have anything.
Okay, that's all right. RJ, sir.
My closing statement is that I think that the Democrats are predictably screwing this up.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they're cross-programming themselves. I think that they are undermining the very idea of why they should be investigating in the first place. And I have little faith that they will see this impeachment inquiry through to its natural conclusion. But I do think that it is very big news, and I think that it's the sort of thing that will appear in history books. So, we're just living it right now. I think that the perspective that that Chris has brought here is important in that it is a perspective that a lot of different people have, like it or not. You know, whether you accept it, whether it is based in objective reality or not, it doesn't matter. That's not a. These are the things that not only people think. These are the things that our politicians are telling us. A lot of the ideas that Chris brought up today are things that were reflected either on Twitter by actual Republican politicians in the past 2 weeks or actually within the impeachment inquiry. So they're things that need to be taken seriously. They can't just be brushed off because someone feels a certain way about them. And I think you're up next, Case. The
RJ, thank you for articulating better what I was trying to say. I really appreciate it. Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine. I think we're probably. Or RJ, do you have anything else to say, or should we move on?
No, I think that the other thing I wanted to say is just to go back to the very first point. The Democrats need to do something about this debate debacle immediately, because I don't think that we're looking. What they're hoping for is that Iowa culls the field, and it's not going to. I mean, Steyer and Bloomberg by themselves can run their own campaign forever. They can self-finance it.
Because they got money bags. Yeah.
I mean, what are you going to do? Tulsi already said that she's not running, so she has nothing to lose. Like,
Tulsi said she's not running.
Yeah, Tulsi has said that she's not going to run again for her seat.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Sorry.
Really?
Yeah, she says she's not running for a seat. She's only going for the presidency.
That's true. Yep, that actually.
Sorry, so she has nothing to lose. She can just throw everything at this.
That's really fascinating.
She could run third party.
She could run third party. She could just continue to throw a wrench in. We're going to have 5 to 6 people into March, and that is not healthy for the Democrats. They need to figure this out. That's all I have. Thanks.
Sure. Okay, Casey, you're up.
Well, thank you all. I go off on a tirade, but it seems that you guys got my point, even if it was on your own, despite my being an ass. But
you weren't being an ass. It's okay.
But I came in here. I love to comment on the debates and stuff, and that's what I had really prepped for and come in. So you guys really informed me a lot about the impeachment process and the legalese involved and like the real levers, like the real clinchers and shit, because that's the stuff that I go out. I had been disconnected from the news for a while, but I've been digging in recently. I've been trying to like dig in and like find the real levers and moving parts of this shit. And the journalists, like I was either not finding the right ones or whatever. Talking with you guys really lined a lot of this stuff out. And I'm always proselytizing about how great it is for us all to sit down and talk about this stuff. Because a functional illiterate like myself cannot understand it until I sit down and talk about it with 5 other very intelligent people. So that's something that America needs, is this discussion to explain it just in frank terms of what's going on without the bullshit. And you guys always do that really well, and that's what makes me so happy to be here with you tonight. And thank you all.
No, thank you for joining us, Casey.
Absolutely.
May I?
Go ahead.
I cede the rest of my time to RJ. He actually articulated everything I want to get out. But I also want to point out that I agree with Casey's last point, too, is that really it's important for Americans to have frank discussions about this process, about the facts, without the bullshit.
Absolutely.
Without the spin, to just think for yourself and look at what's going on and say, do I believe these people or do I believe these people? Who's more credible? What's happening here?
Absolutely. I guess for my points in closing, not echoing anything new, we need a much smaller Democratic field of the more serious candidates. I think it is a testament to the failures to how these debates have been set up. The idea that even though I have no personal animus against Tom Steyer or anybody else who can just buy their way into a debate stage, that they don't belong there, and they're a distraction from the larger conversation that should be having about who it is that Democrats really want to lead them as the candidate who's going to take down Trump. It is a ugly and stupid process, and it's not playing out very well. I'll say that about the debates, about all of this. I think to me at this point, it is whatever Democrats, Biden's, whoever else may be guilty of being, engaged in nepotism, engaged in some kind of corrupt behavior. None of it exonerates Trump. None of it makes okay what he's said or done. I think from the initial synopsis of the transcript, it was black and white that he should go down for it. And if Democrats are going to be smart, it's not because they think he's going to go down for it. It's because they're going to craft that into a winning message, a concise, clean message that Donald Trump, his most ardent fan base, and the Republicans in the Senate have abdicated moral and intellectual responsibility in favor of tribalism, and they're an embarrassment to the American experiment, and they all need to go. That is what, if they are smart, that will be the message. It seems like Pelosi and others are taking in a different direction. One I don't understand, really, and I have no idea how any of this is going to end. But that's my take on it. This is a good point. I really appreciate everyone coming out. Things got a little bit animated, but we're all
They ought to.
we're all friends here. I really enjoyed this. This was a fun conversation. We will be doing it again soon, no doubt. Before I sign off, I want to give a shout out to our digital wizard, Ross James at jamesmedia.com. He's our digital wizard, makes all this stuff work for us. I solicited his aid tonight to no avail, unfortunately. But that said, please check us out. Facebook group page, YouTube channel, Fermenting Opinions, the Fermenting Opinions podcast. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, Beyond Pod, on the web at fermentingopinions.com. See what we are doing, because we're going to put some quality content out there for you. Thank you, RJ, for the product placement. And I am David Papiden.
I'm James McVeigh.
And we're Fermenting Opinions, and we'll see you next time.